Sarah Stevens Marling,
Here.
Jeff Solon, Greg Rosenblatt,
Here.
Chris Daddy,
Here.
Megan Rockwell, Dennis Ryu,
Here.
Chuck Net.
Here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, good. Well, I wanted her to talk about that meeting first. And Jeff D'Onofrio was talking about it. Public comments, correspondence. Sarah, do we have any correspondence?
We do. So I did update the, excuse me, I did update the document that I've been storing the correspondence in. And so we received two pieces of correspondence. One was requesting for us to look at the research around energy efficiency and the cost-benefit analysis with some examples of other projects that have been going on. The second was from our town councilor, one of our town council members,
From Sylvia.
Sylvia. Just gonna go down, I'm using my sorry, my Google Drive is failing me. Here it is. This is the right one. From Sylvia, town councilor, saying that she had heard from some of the folks that she'd been talking with about that the North End design is really fabulous and they think it's like exactly perfect for the area. But that the new Norton design should go back to the drawing board. The comments saying that it just doesn't reflect kids and not welcoming or Cheshire enough, perhaps too trendy. And
And those two correspondence are in our file for you to go through and take a look at and read in detail.
click links.
Okay.
Plenty of links in there too.
Any questions or comments on that? No? And I will open it up to the audience. If you have any public comments or anyone wishes to make. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Could you stand so that I can?
My name is Tucker Deming,
Yep.
230 Oregon Road. I sent that letter to you, and what I'm trying to ferret out here is the life cycle cost, big front end cost to geothermal. And we're assured that the life cycle cost is going to be a return. And I'm looking for examples, real, of a project that has been 5-10 years ago. Allow us to use their data to substantiate the claims that are made about geothermal over the long term. It's very simple. I went through many different searches on Google and whatever, and came up with none that would allow information to be divulged about their existing system, if they even had one. The only one that had any response was the Crone
Good Hall at Yale.
at Hall, at Yale, which has led to some disappointment. We can't get any data out of it. Now, there's one that's been there for at least 10 years. What I feel that our taxpayers shouldn't be on the cutting edge of technology if it's not substantiated.
Thank you. We do have an item on the agenda this evening. Our engineers will be taking a look at the whole thing and giving us some specific data.
Good.
In terms
Great.
of some long-term costs and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes,
Yes, I'm Karen Schnitzer. I live at 18 Courier Place. I just have two comments, questions. You can address whenever you wish. I've been to several of these meetings. I've noticed that, for example, the North End School has, we'll call it, a variety of materials on its facade. Not being an architect, my question is, does this variety of materials lead to a susceptibility of the building to leaks? Or in the case of, for example, very high winds, a tearing apart of those different materials? That's question one. The second one is at the last meeting that I was at, you were discussing whether or not to install lightning protection to the North End School. I don't know whether you threw it out or left it in, but so many systems in schools now are vastly different from when we were all in school. And everything talks to each other, the security systems, the HVAC systems. They probably keep their attendance records online, and even if they're in the cloud, if you get hit by lightning and you fry all your electrics, you're kind of dead in the water. And if that happens, you have to replace, I imagine, a lot of your wiring, etc. And if you decide to retrofit the school with lightning protection, that would probably cost $250,000. This is just a guess, as opposed to $100,000 to put it in when you built the school. That's all.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, not seeing anyone, then we will move on.
Is there any comment during the meeting from the public? And if the answer is no, that's fine. I just want to be clear on that.
We haven't generally had a large number of people here. And
This is
we
a big
wouldn't-
turnout for you.
Yeah, this
Got
is
it.
a huge turnout for us.
It's like 100-fold.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. Totally understand.
We'll see as we go through, if we get to a piece. What I don't want to do is to disrupt the flow of the meeting by having people come in and,
I understand.
Well, I just want to say, I know a number of us are here because we are concerned that the geothermal might get left off the design and that the life cycle cost is being taken into consideration and is front and center in that decision process.
well, what
It
I,
is a proven technology.
Yeah.
It has been used for, it's about 70 years. There have been a large number of.
well, we are having presentation on that this evening, and I will take it under advisement, depending on where it fits in. It's important for the committee to have their conversation, their discussion. If it appears appropriate, then I would open it up for short comment at that time. Okay, approval of meeting minutes, September 14th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay. Did you get that, Ron?
Yep.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Project labor agreements. This is, as you know, a topic which has been sitting on our table for quite some time. Attorney D'Onofrio, a couple of months ago, came in and did a presentation for us. I forwarded some of that information back out to you so that you would recall. And we asked O&G if they would this evening come in. Greg, how do you say your last name, Greg?
Well, if you want to say it properly, it's Oneglia. It's an Italian name, but I go to Oneglia, whatever.
As a guy who's had his last name butchered over the years. When we first interviewed O&G, I know that Greg was there and made an impression in terms of response on national labor, or on project labor agreements. And so as I was talking to one of the members of our committee, they said we would love to have him come back in. So he and Mark are going to kind of walk us through, again, their experience. And I would like to, if at all possible, put this topic to bed by the end of our discussion this evening. So let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rich. Mark?
Yeah.
Mark shared with me the information that your attorney shared with you guys. And as I read through it, generally, I agree with that. Back years ago, when there were more labor disputes in our industry, and, you'd have a strike during the course of a job, and it would disrupt the schedule and that type of thing. So project labor agreements eliminate things like that. There's no strike clauses. You work through the problems. You keep working. So a lot of the things that they say about PLAs work. One of the other features that I think is very nice is if your community happens to have, for example, a lot of craftspeople in your town that are voters, you have a PLA, it gives these people maybe an opportunity, especially if they're union people, to work on your school projects in your town. You can also, with PLAs, specify that a certain number of contractors from the town have to be employed, on the projects. I guess they call it community workforce provisions. So there's things like that. For example, at Torrington High School, which we're doing now under a PLA, they have a goal of 25% of the workforce, a goal, be Torrington residents. And it's a PLA, so that everybody has to be union. But there's a goal there that would obviously give people in Torrington an opportunity to work on their school. Absent that, there's usually not a goal, and the workmen come from wherever they come from. So there are a lot of things you can put in a PLA that help. One of the things that the unions say is that, well, there's more tradespeople available. If your job has a tight schedule, you can put more people on the job. You can call the union hall, they send more people. What we're having to see in our industry right now, our industry is very, very busy, and it's very hard to find craftspeople, for example. And so mason contractors, union mason contractors, are having trouble getting masons. And even if you had a PLA, it's not as simple as they call the hall and you get more people. It's just a factor of the way our industry has changed over the last few years. Fewer and fewer people are going into it. PLA is not going to help you if that's the condition. The cons of the thing, and this is purely anecdotal. And what I have done is I've looked back on all the school CM projects, not all of them, but maybe 7 or 8 of them that we've done over the last 10 years. And there's no PLAs on these jobs that I looked at. And so we have bid packages. We've discussed this, how we put the job out into different packages, a site package, a concrete package, a masonry package, a structural steel package. We put out about 25 bid packages, and anybody can bid. They have to be bondable. They have to, bid and have a bond and everything, which protects the town, of course. And what our experience is, when we look at our bid results, you'll look and you'll see non-union contractors will be the low bidder. So what I do is I look to see where is the nearest union bidder. So for example, a site contractor might be the low bidder on the package. Was there a union site bidder that bid also? And I looked at the delta between the non-union price and the union price that we received on that job. And then as I've done that through 8 or 9 projects, I could go through the statistics with you because I have them here. What I find is that usually the union bidders, if the non-union guy's low and you look where the next union bidder is, the delta would be anywhere from 3 to 7% on a job. In other words, if the non-union guy was low, where was the nearest union guy? What was that spread? And then you add up all those spreads, and it could vary anywhere from 3 to 7% on a job. And I just happened, so I looked at the Farmington High School, for example, which we're doing Torrington and Farmington. They're both about the same size jobs. Torrington was done under a PLA. Farmington was not. And the delta on the Farmington job between union and non-union was 7.4%. In other words, and for example, in the mechanical and electrical area, there was, or let's see, pick one up. Structural steel, for example, the delta was 112% $23,000. The delta on concrete was $124,000. The delta on glass windows was $270,000. The delta on general trades, which does the toilet partitions, things like that, the way we package, the delta was $676,000. So it totaled up to about $7 million of difference if you looked at where the nearest union guy was to the non-union guy. So it was about 7%. I just happened to see this week, Gilbane put a job out to bid in West Haven, Connecticut, called the New West Side School, I think. And the delta down there was almost 7% also. If you looked at the bids they received, who was low, and then where was the nearest union bidder. Other jobs we've done where I've tracked this over the last few years. Bear with me, I'm just getting up here. So I went through Farmington. We did a school in Manchester, Buckley Elementary School, and the delta there was 7.7% between the union and the non-union guys.
Sounds pretty consistent.
We did Oxbridge Elementary School, which was down in Darien, and the delta there was 3.9%. We did Oxford Middle School in 2019, the delta was 8.5%. The El Grasso, which was a big job for the state down in Groton, the delta was 7.8%. And we had, this was Lime Old Lime, this was in 2010, so it was quite a few years ago, but 6.5%. So that's just what we see when you have open shop bids. The other thing that was, and on Gilbane's, here's Gilbane's, the delta on the one that they just bid was the New Washington Elementary School, and the delta was 4.63%. It'd be a little more expensive. The other thing that we noticed is that when we bid Torrington, and like I said, we have 25 bid packages, how many bidders on average did we get? Some of the packages like site work, concrete work, mechanical, electrical, we get a lot of bids. You get 8 or 9 bids. Some of the packages like fire protection, you might get only 1 or 2 bids, but on average, Torrington, when we put Torrington out to bid with a PLA, we got 3.21 bids per package. Farmington, we got 3.91 bids per package. So a little bit more action when there's no PLA than when there's a PLA. The biggest problem that I notice generally, the basic trades, which I would say is, the site work, the carpentry work, concrete, that type of thing. The union guys are just as apt to beat the non-union guys. It's just, who's hungriest at bid day. Where we see the biggest delta is in the mechanical, plumbing and HVAC and electrical trades. And I'm kind of like to say that what I've noticed in my career is that business in Connecticut, those trades, have really become more of a non-union trade than union trades. So, where you're really kind of think at a disadvantage when you use a PLA is you're gonna get many fewer bidders because there's just not that many big union guys around bidding the work anymore. There's a lot more non-union guys bidding the plumbing, HVAC, and electrical work.
In general, towns like Cheshire are not using PLAs. Is that accurate?
Torrington used it because I think they have a big, a lot of
Much
people there
more
that are
blue-collar
tradespeople.
town, yeah.
And the other thing is that there's a lot of people in the high school in Torrington where they're trying to promote getting kids into the construction business, So up there, under the PLA, the plumbers will come in and they'll put on a class for the kids to show them what the opportunities are if you're a plumber, or the electricians will do the same thing. And so it exposes kids. You can do that under a PLA. The unions are very happy to do that. So it kind of becomes a political decision for the town. You look at one other thing too is that you also have requirements to meet the minority hiring requirements for for the bidders, CHRO. And one of the problems with a PLA, there's a lot of minority contractors, but they tend to be smaller. And, you know, they don't want to join a union. They have, you know, 10, 15 guys, they'll come in and do the sidewalks, they'll do things. They're very good at what they do, but they're not going to sign a PLA. So a lot of people, I just happened to get a notice from the National AGC, which, you know, construction organization today, from a chapter that is asking people, or states that use PLAs, that they exempt certain size contractors from the PLA so that they can get some of these minority contractors to bid, because they're not gonna become union contractors. And so that's, if you're concerned about that, if you do use a PLA and you have a lot of minority contractors in town, you might wanna have an exemption. For Hartford did that years ago. We did a project in Hartford where they had a PLA, and Hartford had a requirement that you had to use Hartford contractors. And so they set aside 10% of the work for Hartford contractors, you know, and they didn't have to join the PLA to do the work. So those are things you have to consider, but they're political decisions. You know, if you have a lot of tradespeople here and you're getting pressure, then you want a PLA. I think you're gonna probably pay a little bit more.
We haven't gotten any pressure that I'm aware of. So
Yeah, one thing to remember too is that even when we bid it as an open shop project, you know, without the PLA, we will get probably 40 to 45% of the bidders, low bidders, will be union contractors. So it's not like
Sorry,
we're
I-
excluding union contractors from bidding our projects. We typically see, you know, around 40%, 45% of union contractors being the low bidder. So to have good representation from the union community.
Do you see any impact, sort of like at the end of the day, you look back, is one school quality-wise, would you be able to say this one must have been a PLA or this one must not have been a PLA for the quality of work?
No.
What about maintaining schedule? Do you see one job is more apt to stay on or more apt to stay off? It really comes out to the dollars.
Yeah.
And those
I
other
have-
intangibles,
yeah.
if you will.
I'm working on 3 PLA projects right now and 2 non-PLA projects, and schedules are the same, quality of work is the same. We don't see any difference in that from one to the other.
Why did 3 choose the PLA and the other 2 not? Was there a theme or a reason why?
A couple of the projects I'm involved with are in larger communities, so Manchester would be one of them.
Presence.
Yep, New London would be the other, and then Providence, Rhode Island, being the third. So usually it's the larger communities.
And I talked to the head of the building committee up at Torrington. He's someone I worked with, so I know very well. And it is a community where they have many more tradespeople. And as you said, they also did tie in some of the high school students into the project and that sort of thing. So it's a different kind of community.
What about having 2 projects at the same time? Like the amount of work that you have for both Norton and the north end going on at the same time in the same neighborhood. You see that as an issue of getting contractors without a PLA?
Laurel, I mean, we've been a number of projects, you know, multiple projects.
Yeah, the 2 Groton elementary schools went together, and sometimes you have 2 different contractors, and sometimes you have the same for both, depends on how much work they've got going on.
I think the bigger issue is how much work is out on the street at that time. I mean, they're talking about a $300 million high school down in Stanford that's going to attract a lot of interest. That's going to start in 2025. I think you guys will be ahead of that. You know, just depends on how much work is out.
In our project right now is, as you can tell from the estimates that we presented, is really budget driven at this point, right? So we really want to try to attract as many bidders as we can, make it most competitive as we can, and get the best pricing that we can for the town.
The good thing for Cheshire too is you're in the center of the state. I mean, if we have a job up in the northwest corner in Salisbury, you're gonna get fewer contractors. They're gonna wanna come up there. We did a job down and did put out a job out to bid recently in Darien, and you get a lot of contractors from the Hartford area. And there's enough work here, they don't have to go down to Darien, so they didn't bid. Normally, we get a lot of bids from Hartford contractors, but there's a lot of work here. And you're in the right sweet spot for that,
But still with the two projects going at the same time, is there ways you can structure the bid packages? Like, I have to imagine if masonry is going on at the same time, contractors can be very interested in the masonry contract,
Right, because they could have two crews,
Because they could
right?
have, well, they could have both of them, right? But it could be, get to the point where they don't have enough on one job, they're just kind of skimming on both of them to get by. So how do you structure the bid packages to
Well,
kind of account for that?
we make sure when we're doing our scope reviews, what they plan on doing for crews. And most of the contractors that bid us, we're familiar with them. We know what they're capable of.
And then what about the bidding process? Like, we have to have qualified bids and everything. Do you take just the lowest bid, or is there a qualifying process, or can you take a bid that may be higher just because of the workmanship, for good?
No, it's lowest
It's all
qualified,
bid,
responsible bidder.
They're all DSA qualified bidders that are bidding the project. They have to be. So they are technically pre-qualified by the state.
They gotta provide a bond. They gotta be bondable. And then they also have to give their work experience. They have to be experienced. They have to, give you their first breath.
So you're
First try.
pre-qualifying them before they,
No, we're not
Well,
pre-qualifying.
technically, the state's doing that, right, by their program, right?
Well,
The
It's
DES.
over 500,000, yeah, or what, just up to $1 million.
And after we take the bids, I think we do very detailed scope reviews with maybe the 2 or 3 low bidders to make sure they fully understand the schedule, right, and understand the scope. And I can say, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think maybe once or twice in the last 20 years, we brought a guy in for the scope review, and he just didn't have the scope of the job down. He didn't have enough blocks, or, we asked how many brick block did you take on for how many yards of concrete? And if we see a vast difference between what our takeoff is and what the other bidders are telling us, this guy, we will, and the guy says he can do the job, he's got a bond, then we leave that decision up to you. We say, he's telling us he's got the job covered, he doesn't have as much concrete as everybody else, but he's got a bond, and he says he can do the job, so that's gonna be your call. If you want to go forward with him or go with the guy that you think is more correct with quantities, isn't that fair to say, Laura?
Yeah, well, if they're screaming low, we usually, I've had disqualified a couple, if they didn't want to withdraw their bid. Usually we make them realize they made a mistake and they'll end up withdrawing their bid, and these are the people that are really low compared to everybody else, because you don't want to get that back, you don't want to get that deal. Right? You don't want that deal. So if they're unwilling to withdraw their bid, I have disqualified.
So if one of your trades, everybody's within 2 or 3%, and then there's one that's 30% lower, your scope review is gonna be really drilling down,
Yeah.
and you could even just say, they left something up there.
However, I have hired electricians, low electrician, was like 30% low. They said, yes, we have it all covered. We gave them the job and it was fine, so you gotta be careful in that respect too. There could be a reason why they're low, but that's the whole vetting process with the scope review, is make sure they understand, and it's in writing, what the scope is. We take minutes of the scope meetings, quantities, and, that they have everything covered. So it's really depends.
And even though I understand I'm off the PLA, but the scope review, it's not just you guys, it's the entire design team.
Yes,
It's
design team.
As appropriate.
They're consultants
Yeah.
and,
Whoever the designers are and the architects. And sometimes the owners want to sit down with them too. So where were you with the PLA?
I was a little loud.
Okay, so,
Other-
But still, it's very helpful info, even to answer me side questions, so I do thank you for presenting everything you did.
other comments or questions? Rich, have you had experiences either way?
Yeah, I would say that what Greg described is consistent with what we're also seeing. I mean, we've seen anywhere from 7 to 8% difference in the pricing, and as Greg said, you get a lower turnout with PLAs than you do with others. It decreases the competition, which raises the price.
7% could make a huge difference in a project like this.
Well, like Mark pointed out, this is definitely budget driven. It's more Norton than North End, but we definitely need to look closely at the numbers.
Do any of if you do not have the PLA, it's open, so even all the union shops can also
That's right.
provide. You're not excluding anybody, correct?
Correct.
And theoretically, everybody supposedly is paying the Davis-Bacon wage, like, because it's a public job. So that's supposedly levels the field. And these bidders all give you, their certified payrolls. So they're certifying that they're paying a prevailing wage, so unless they're lying or something, you catch them lying. Theoretically, they're all on the same page. But what I always said, what I noticed years ago, for example, we had a big site job. We self-perform a lot of work ourselves. This is what I noticed. If we were putting a pipe on a big site, putting pipe in, we would have an operating engineer on the backhoe and maybe the guy on the bucket loader backfilling the pipe after it's installed. And you'd have maybe three laborers and a foreman putting the pipe in the ditch. And so I figured a crew of maybe 7 guys doing it, 2 operators, foreman, maybe 4 or 5 laborers. And when it's a union job, the laborer can't jump on the backhoe and run the backhoe because the operator's not going to let them do it, and they're not going to let the operator jump out of the cab and work like a laborer. And what we find with the non-union guys is they don't have those union rules. So what a non-union guy will do, will have the foreman set up the laser for the pipe to put the pipe in the ground, and the backhoe will dig, and the laborers will start putting the pipe in. And then the foreman will jump on the bucket loader to backfill after the pipe is in. So he's got one less guy on the crew than the union guy would have. So it's not that they're not paying the same wage. They can just do it more efficiently because they don't have the jurisdiction of, the operator's gonna yell if the foreman happens to be the laborer. The operators are gonna get upset if he's running the bucket loader. The non-union guy doesn't have to struggle with that, so they're a little more efficient. That's the example I always give to explain some of the deltas between the union and non-union guys. They get by with one less guy, maybe.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm interested about, you mentioned kind of these intangible benefits with PLAs, like this community building aspect, this teaching aspect, offset by like quite a large amount of money. I just wondered if there are any more of these like intangible benefits that come along with the PLA. I guess not intangible, they are tangible.
Well, the fact that you can't have a strike.
Mhm.
One of the things that goes on in the union business is that, maybe I shouldn't be saying all this, I don't know. Like, sometimes you see the carpenters fighting, say, with the iron workers, because the carpenters will claim some aspect of work, like installing a window that maybe the iron workers claim or something. And so you have jurisdictional, they're called jurisdictional disputes. If you have a jurisdictional dispute, it could shut the job down. And there's a whole procedure for getting it resolved. If you have a PLA, there will not be a stoppage. The contractor makes the assignment, he does the work, and they can't shut the job down over that. Years ago, they used to shut jobs down over these jurisdictional disputes. So that's sort of an intangible. You have the no strike clause. You're not going to stop if there's a jurisdictional dispute. A lot of that hasn't happened in years. It used to be worse years ago.
Yeah, have you seen changes? I feel like across the US right now, there's a very pro-labor and a lot more striking and organizing. And I'm just wondering if you're seeing that in the construction sphere at all, like it's heating up a little bit more.
No, I don't think so. I mean, we had all of our union agreements came up this year to be renewed, and we settled them pretty amicably for, they're 4-year agreements, so there's not going to be any,
In our timeline.
There's the laborers, they're not going to be up during the course of your job, they're all settled, the operators. The wage increases that they got, I think, were pretty fair and consistent given the inflation we have and everything else. In the 3.5% to 4.5% range per year, but those are good.
Thank you.
Can some of those, glad you brought that up, can some of those, I'll say perks or, things that you write in, can that also be written in on an open one? Just, like you said, you still have to have the 10% of whatever those letters were for, like minority.
CHRO.
CHRO.
Yeah.
But
That's a
can-
statute.
But can you write something in if you wanted so many people from in town, but you can still write that in even if it's not PLA, right?
Correct.
As long as it's a goal, you can't make it a requirement, because the state doesn't like that. If you're OGA, Office of School Grants, they don't like you restricting and making mandates, unless it's like a town ordinance. If it's a town ordinance, that's okay, but it can be a goal.
Okay, interesting.
Other comments, questions? Are we ready for a motion?
I am.
Would you like to make
Do
a
we-
motion?
I do have one question. Yes. Do both schools need to be the same?
I mean, one PLA and one not,
Yeah.
that would be an experiment.
Not
Because
that
everybody
way.
wants to do that, everybody wants to bid them at the same time, well, it's still not the same project.
I would get
Would
our
be
A/B testing.
interesting.
Or we just add some complexity?
Yeah, if you want to be part of a study.
I think you answered my question.
Complexity usually means.
That's probably one of the clearest
Yeah.
answers I've ever gotten without actually answering. But I do believe we need to vote separately, like we've done for everything else.
What do you mean separately? We need to make a motion
For each
and take
For
a
each
vote.
school. Yeah, each school needs to have its own motion and vote on this topic,
We can do that, yeah.
as we've done with every other large decision.
Yep.
I'd make a motion to go open bid for Norton Elementary School.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Second motion?
Okay, I'll make the motion to go open bid at New North End Elementary School.
New North End Elementary School. Second?
I'll second it again.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? You got all that, Ron?
Yep.
Okay. Greg, Mark, thank you very much.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Bet I go to bed at 9:00 at my age.
You'll notice I pushed him up to the front of the agenda.
I appreciate that.
They asked that they would pass them on early. There were more packages.
I can give up mine if you need.
Here's a full one, Sean.
Oh, you should. Oh, sorry, Sarah.
No, it's okay.
Yep, there was no chair there, so I stayed alone.
You're welcome. My pulse was.
I think it was, I think it was fruitful. I remembered, I actually found it. Still, this was influence we would not otherwise have.
Yeah.
All right, next on the agenda is action on submitted
Open session,
invoices. I had forwarded those invoices to you. As you'll recall, we have to make a motion on each one separately. The first one is for the new Norton Elementary School. Owner's rep for Arcadis, $7,668.57. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second. Yeah.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Second is for architect, Tecton Architects, $75,093. This is again for New North Elementary. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Move to approve. Second? Second?
Sorry, you said, we're still talking about Norton, right?
Norton, yes.
Did I say Norton?
I thought you said
Yeah.
North End, but. Oh.
One of the things I'm gonna recommend at the end of this process, if you're doing two schools, don't give them names. It causes so much confusion. Yes, Norton, for architect, Tecton, $75,093.
I didn't miss a section.
Thank you for catching.
No,
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
Any
we'll-
discussion?
You already got them.
Okay. All those in favor? Unanimous. Continuing with Norton, commissioning agent Van Zelm Engineers, $937.50. Again, do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Move to approve. Second?
I'll second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, now over to the new North End Elementary. Owner's architect, representative rather, Arcadis, $6,825.72. Do I have a motion?
Nope.
Sarah?
Yep.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Architect, Tecton Architects, $88,900. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Dennis, a second?
I'll second it this time.
Second, okay, there we go. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, go ahead.
The reimbursables, are you supposed to add up to the regional water authority and Florida on?
They do. Well, so it's our-
There's another one?
And then it's the final.
That's more, or that's less than Oh, okay, it's the 860, I got you.
Yeah.
That's these two together. I got you. Okay.
You okay?
Yep.
Okay. And we have a motion in a second?
Yep.
And then all those in favor? Opposed?
Yeah,
Unanimous.
twice too, 'cause we're the same number.
And commissioning agent, Van Zelm Engineers, $957.60. All those, whoops. Well, I have a motion. Thank you, Dennis. A second? Second. Greg, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Very good, thank you. Chairman's report, we've had a number of meetings over the last week and a half. There was a presentation done to the town council by the whole crew, Justin and Jeff in particular. It was a very well-received presentation, particularly the plans for the north end. Some suggestions on the Norton School. Particularly, they got very heavily involved with where the field is that's near North Brooksvale and some things like that. But overall, the town council was very positive in that presentation. Working group meeting, that is a group that meets every 2 weeks. It's largely staff members. And they're working now through the various facilities, looking at the office, looking at the nurse, looking at the gym, looking at the cafeteria, the finishes, the layout, things like that. Long meeting, it was a couple hours at least, but making some nice headway and getting a lot of input in the process. Community event on the 26th, which was 2 days ago, for Chapman and Darcy, was at Chapman School, focusing on the North End School. Got probably about 20 citizens, and then our staff were there, obviously. And overall, it was well received. There were a number of questions. I think the staff handled them very, very well. And I think most people left there feeling pretty positive. Last night was community event on Norton. Again, we got about 20 people. I was surprised. I thought Norton, being right in the middle of a very residential area, that we were going to get a large number of people who lived in that area coming. So it was about the same size, and there was even a couple of people that had come to the North End one that came back for the sequel. That one was a little more contentious. People had some very specific ideas about what they wanted to see in terms of the building design and in terms of some of the things like parking, the fields, things like that. So there were a number of suggestions and ideas that were thrown out. One gentleman very strongly talking about the use of wood on the outside of the building and how that was something that he was very much not in favor of. And some people feeling that the exterior of the building at this point isn't quite in line with what they would like to see for that area. We made the point that these are ongoing discussions and changes, and that we will continue to work on it. Meeting with the state was held on 9/27, and that was focusing on Norton School, and that went very, very well. The state people seem to be very pleased with the progress that we're making. They had previously approved the North End School, and didn't raise any serious issues regarding our schematic design for Norton. And then I wanted to point out that we were invited to attend a meeting of the Energy Commission. We couldn't make the September one, so I talked to the chairman, we emailed, and we are scheduled to come in on the 30th of October. And that's going to be myself, one of the architects, and an engineer to talk to them about, the energy systems that are contained in the two buildings, and make sure that we fully inform them of our plans up to this point. Any comments or questions on?
Is there a meeting or minutes from the meetings at Chapman, Darcy, and then the Norton one?
took
Antonio
down
took,
all the questions.
yeah, she took down questions. I wouldn't call them minutes, but she did say that she was gonna,
Yeah, we have all
Type
of the
those out.
questions, yeah. We typically don't take minutes per se of public presentations, but we do take a record of the questions that are asked, so.
and we can send those out as soon as, I don't know if she's got those done yet. It was just last night and the
Yeah, I'd
night
like to see
before.
them, so.
Is there a common theme at Norton, what would satisfy most of the attendees?
I wouldn't say so. I don't think that anyone, for instance, with the North End, it was very clearly stated by a number of people. We want to see something that's more barn-like, and that was discussed all the time. For Norton, there's nothing specific that they're pointing out. There are people that are saying, it looks more like something that you'd see in California, or it looks like something that's, one woman told me it's too contemporary. There was a woman last night that I spoke with who said, I don't like the way the two wings go out on an angle. I would rather see a nice square building. A lot of opinions. I wouldn't say that there was.
No consensus?
Yeah, I mean, Justin, Jeff, I don't know if I didn't get a direct sense yet of, what changes. And I think that's gonna have to come from us.
Yeah, we've looked to this group to understand. After our last meeting with this group on Norton, I felt pretty good. There was things that we needed to take away and revise, but we thought we were closer, and then hearing some of this other feedback in the email correspondence. So I guess we just need this group to kind of gather consensus.
Yeah,
and kind
there's
of
some
give us
strong
direction.
feelings, and you saw the email that Sylvia sent out, and she was quoting a number of people from the community. And so I think, that clearly we need to continue to revisit. And I think that issue with the playground and the parking and the driveways, that's an issue that we really need to talk about.
Yeah, I think the site-related items are clear. We understand and we can study, because that came up at the town council, it came up at the community
Right.
sessions. And I think we can do a better job communicating, what fields are for what, so that people understand that, the travel distances and things like that. But the aesthetics on the exterior were more general in nature, so if there's a better direction given, we'd be happy to look at it. We need a little bit more clarity to, a
And
direction.
we may be able to get into that somewhat at the end of this meeting
Sure.
when we go through it, but
Yep.
it may just be an item that we make a major piece of an agenda for maybe our next meeting. Okay, any other comments or questions on the? So, all righty. Town purchase of 422 North Brooksvale. I turn to you, Sean. Kind of fill us in on where we're at.
Yeah, so on Saturday, September 16th, the town was successful in bidding at the foreclosure a purchase price of $203,000, which will actually be reduced further because the town has liens on the property, so we're sort of paying ourselves off on that anyway. But so it's good news, I think, for the project. It'll be officially, the money will be appropriated at the next council meeting, and the closing, I think, is at the end of October. Yeah, so no, final plans in terms of what's going to happen with the full property, including the house itself, right? I know, as we've shown on the maps, probably the most advantageous portion of it, of course, is on the east side of the property that we can have cleaned up. I know there's been a lot of questions about the cost for how we're going to use that property. I think we're planning to have, once it's closed and we have it, we're going to have Public Works get in there. There's been no opportunity to go in the building, in the house itself, or really on the property until we are owners to do any clearing and whatnot. But the plan would be to have Public Works assess it and hopefully do a lot of the work in-house. If we can do so before the winter months, kind of the shoulder season, when we get some of this kind of work done, to hopefully kind of clear up some area to save on cost. Again, no final determination in terms of whether the house will come down or not, but it's going to kind of also depend on communications with this group, frankly, about how we're best going to use it.
I know at one point in the conversation, I think it may have been between Ben and you guys, there was talk about splitting the property, kind of squaring off our piece, and maybe being able to enhance the bus entrance and exit.
Right.
Not taking that whole property, which we really don't have a need for it. How large is it altogether?
So it's 3/4 of an acre, but if you squared it off there, the other parcels in that neighborhood for the zoning R20, I think, is 0.46 of an acre is standard. So if you square it off, it is actually 0.46 acres. So another option the town has would be to keep the building intact, potentially even subdivide it and sell off that portion, and then affix this portion to the other property. So a lot of kind of final decisions to be made depending on what the ultimate plan is for it. But the good news is now we're the first time in the driver's seat in terms of being able to dictate what happens with that property.
You don't foresee any major cost to this group?
I don't. I think in terms of clearing, again, that area where there's the garage and the shed, again, this is all, with the caveat that we haven't been on and into the property to inspect everything, how much we can do in-house. But we have the equipment to be able to do, some clearing and grading and whatever we might need to do, depending on what they find there. In terms of where I think from that portion over to where the driveway would be. Now, we have to put a driveway in that section anyway, whether it's moved there or, the actual paving on the driveway, the access will still be part of the project. But if we can do what we can to assist and keep the cost of that area, there's no demolition or remediation cost that will be assigned to this group's project.
Any potential hazardous waste on that site?
I don't know. But
And have you guys looked at all at what it would do to our plans?
Yeah, we did some preliminary analysis with the civil engineer regarding the greatest advantage is the separation of the two curb cuts on North Brooksville. The longer distance you have between them, the better it is for traffic, queuing, bottlenecking at the intersection. It also may give us a little bit more flexibility with whatever that green space out on the frontage of North Brooksville ultimately becomes. Some of the comments that we've heard in public are, are there going to be soccer balls that are being launched into the street? So maybe there's a way to address that with a slightly larger space. So I don't think I don't think the answer is to put the parking out near the street and have everybody that's parking for the school walk that distance to the school. I think the solution is rec, but just however we can manage that flow.
Just put a people mover.
Yeah.
The monorail, right?
It is downhill. So.
Both ways?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question about that house as well as the house that's over by North End. So is the town planning on doing anything with either of those two houses? Like I would consider, if it's possible, using them as a field office perhaps. Just want to know if that's an option.
Yeah, I think at this point, yeah, I think that option's on the table for sure. I think we
Okay,
just
so
wanna
it's not
talk
like
about
you're
what that
gung ho
logis-
to go demoing them or anything?
No, if we don't, no,
Okay.
we don't need to. I would say the condition of the one on Jarvis is much more habitable.
Yeah.
With certainty. We now have tenants there, the prior owners that we purchased it from have had a lease back provision through June of next year. But at that point, it becomes our property. And
I don't
there's
know.
no immediate plans.
North Brooksville, I don't know, it's all boarded up. I have no idea what.
So it was like.
It's boarded up, but it was
it
also
condemned?
it was also open to the elements for some time.
Oh, so it's probably.
Yeah, I don't-
nasty. Okay.
Loosely boarded up. So that would, yeah.
It would work well around Halloween.
Yeah, it hasn't been occupied for some time.
Yeah, I think somebody bought it, was gonna renovate it, and,
But it was left without windows on for a while, and there were animals.
yeah. Whereas the one by the north end, that's still
It's
being
inhabited.
Yeah,
yes,
that one's,
that's a
right.
different
The prior
story.
owners are still in there. So,
Okay.
yeah,
To be
so
clear,
that
we're
one-
gonna demo the one at the north end, just
I-
not immediately.
Yeah, yeah, and to be clear, right, to separate the two, that one is planned to be demoed in really any plan that we have here. That's.
There may be some cost savings if we could use that as a field office instead of bringing in trailers. So,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
Who
that,
would be responsible for the demo of that house, forgetting about this new
The
discussion?
north end or the northern one?
The north end.
so, we have some remaining available budget. I believe we purchased it for $380 with a $400,000 appropriation. So there's $20,000 left over, probably not enough to demo the whole thing, depending on how much we could potentially do in-house again. But it has to be, remediated or whatever you'd have to do anyway. So, I don't know for sure in terms of what the full budget is. Again, anticipate the plan would be to do as much as we can as the town to keep it out of the project that has a tight budget as we all know. So.
So if you guys do use it as a field office, does it get removed like all your field offices by you when you're done?
Well, I think we were bearing the demo of it in our last estimate.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
There might be a
so it's just something to keep in mind, as long as you're not just going in there and,
But are we supposed to be carrying the demo of that in our budget?
I think we did. didn't
Because
we?
it's not part of the parcel that was approved in referendum. It's not part of the project.
Pretty sure we did.
This is part of the
Well, in
project.
fact, well, we have to,
No,
we have to put something into the state to add those two pieces of property.
Right.
Right now, they're not.
that's
part of-
off property.
Yeah.
And it wasn't voted on, and that's not part of,
Yeah, because this.
that's all new
Yeah.
from the time the project was
Yeah,
approved.
yeah, there's a supplemental piece. They talked about that when we went to the state. And we have to justify
Well, that's the way
why
the
those
fire
pieces of land were necessary to add to the site.
If you don't make a modification to the
Seeing it.
053, the site selection, then any work that's part of that parcel is technically considered offsite and not eligible for reimbursement. If you do modify it, then it becomes enrolled in your project, and any work that's there becomes eligible for reimbursement.
Yeah, it's
So-
just changing the acreage from the state's perspective.
Right, but from a scope of work perspective, it adds demolition and clearing and site work that was not part of the original project or the original estimate.
But you will get 50% back.
Only if the parcel gets moved to the, only if that's approved.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're tracking that right, but I don't
Yeah.
recall us saying that we voted on that to be.
Yeah.
added
Rich, would
into
you
our
add that
budget.
to our open item? Because that's something that needs to come back to the school.
It's in the estimate right now.
Hmm?
It's in our estimates,
We are carrying money for it, so.
30 grand.
You guys feel any money for it too?
I'm pretty sure we aligned on that.
Just 30?
As long as I get one of the bedrooms in the house.
It's not, that's not gonna put us back on budget.
No, no, no. It's not.
You're gonna have to kick the raccoons out.
Some basketball hoops.
Which one?
Oh, you're putting me on North Brookfield.
I get North End.
All right, Rich, open item log.
Okay, so, you all have in front of you a sheet that's got, the open items.
And I asked Rich to put on a nice big piece of paper. because
So we can all read it.
I couldn't read the little tiny.
Shouldn't be told I couldn't either.
And I also asked him, he had kept a lot of the closed items on there, pending further discussion, and I said, take them off at this point, let's focus in. Everyone had a chance to see them and react to them, and let's focus in on open items.
Right.
This
Yeah,
is-
sorry, but the closed ones are still somewhere.
We've rolled them up.
Okay, there's like hidden
Yes,
in the,
they're,
okay.
they're in there, yeah.
Yeah, they're on the spreadsheet,
Oh,
in case you
and there's-
print it
and
out
they're
at any
numbered.
time.
Yeah.
Yes, and they're numbered.
So we sorted by open and closed, and then we just hit the closed items.
I just know there's gonna be a time where we're like, did we talk about this? And then we can just open it up.
And if the target date is blank, that means it's not a
Well-
critical item, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, what we want to do is maybe see if we can close some of these items tonight. I left them open because the way they were answered is that they're being addressed in design. So I just wanted to get the committee's feel on, you know, the design team has that under control. So the first, from 4 to about 8 or 12, those were comments that came out of the ed specs. And so, first one is the lighting system specifications. And the question or the comment was suggesting 90 CRI fixtures in the art classrooms or the display areas. I think Justin's comment back on that is that, that Tecton has acknowledged for further review.
Yeah, and this will be part of our, so we're gonna go through all of these.
Yes, I want to run through them all.
Okay. We will, we do have this set up for a room by room that we'll discuss it with our faculty.
Okay, and we haven't gotten to the org rooms yet. That's, I think, in the next meeting.
Item number 5 is emergency backup using self-contained battery ballast or DC power if available. Comment was testing and maintenance of this type of system is difficult. One central inverter or multiple large inverters will minimize maintenance and testing. Status is open, and the design team will review and respond. I think I put that in there because I think that was left blank, Justin, on the responses.
We have a generator for both buildings, right?
Right.
So this is irrelevant.
Yeah.
So it's irrelevant on one thing, and it's a possibility on North End only for this particular reason. Since you are planning on using it as a warming center, if for some reason you have an outage of your generator while you're occupied, you'll have 0 lights. So a redundant battery system to support that is highly recommended, although not necessarily required by code, yet highly recommended. So your people that are there are not in the dark and can evacuate the building. That's again, you're putting belts and suspenders on something and you're planning for an event that potentially could happen. And if it does happen, it gives safety to the people that are in the building.
What kind of cost are you looking at?
For inverter, now you're gonna be a 6-figure number, low 6 figures, probably.
So this is a backup to the backup.
It's a backup to the backup in the event you're occupied and your generator for some reason craps out.
Is it the more emergency lights only, or is that all light on?
Emergency lights only,
Oh, just to get out.
just to allow people to evacuate in the event something happens while you're there in a dire condition, and they're not left in the dark.
So it's a backup to backup, but it's a code required backup to backup, right?
I'm not sure that's been confirmed. I know you and John had the conversation, I'm not sure it's been confirmed.
Will there be UPS units?
No, the inverter is the battery.
No, but will there be UPS devices for any of the lighting systems?
No, not UPS, no, an inverter system. Inverter basically is a UPS in all sense of the word.
So can I ask a question? If it's not a warming center and the emergency generator is used for emergency. That requirement goes away.
Meets the intent of the code, correct.
That's right.
You're not required to put redundancy on top of redundancy.
So the question, if I could just clarify, and this was, you said this was from one of the ed
It
spec
was,
comments.
it was that
So
section.
the ed spec was describing a battery in that fixture
Right.
and a battery in that fixture. And the comment was, that's a lot of maintenance for people. Why don't we have one, for simplistic terms, one great big battery in the closet over there that handles the whole corridor. So when they go to test it, you push one button, you test the whole area. When a battery fails, you don't need a ladder, you don't need to shut down rooms. It's a more efficient way of doing it, and it was the thought
Understood.
process. That was the question. It wasn't about the implementation or with the generator or not. And I mean, that's a whole other discussion, because you have to throw the term emergency into the generator and the whole distribution system and all of that, if you are using it for the emergency lighting. Otherwise, it's just optional standby, and you don't need all of the other things. And if you have the inverter, that saves you possibly, those are design decisions. I want to caution myself with saying that. I'm not the designer here, and I'm not the one balancing the dollars and real estate and available product and that sort of thing. But those are other options. So the question here was, do we really want to go with what is asked for, which is 1,000 batteries in the school? Or do we want to maybe have 3 or 4 larger cabinets that are much more, let's say, self-contained? That was the question.
Do you have a response to that?
My preference would be, for first cost, the decentralized system is less expensive. But as a maintenance point of view and future cost down the road, the inverter is a better approach if we're not going to use the generator as an emergency system, which we'd recommend use the generator as an emergency system. And
That's
then
what we
and
typically-
delete the inverter altogether.
So in an emergency, the generator kicks on,
Yeah, within 10 seconds.
lights
light-
everything up.
Yes, that's correct.
If the generator craps out, the batteries come on.
No, you wouldn't have that. Under normal conditions.
No,
just-
I'm talking about North End because it's a warming center.
That's what would happen in that case, yes.
So code doesn't require the batteries if you have the generator.
Correct.
So this is just belt and suspenders.
Well, no. So let me clarify my understanding of that, if I might. If the building is not expected to be occupied during a power outage, your emergency system, be it individual batteries, large battery inverters, or a approved generator system as your emergency system, that would kick on an outage, and you get out and you vacate the building.
Yeah, but we're putting a generator.
But no, I'm just saying, you have 2 scenarios: a building that you intend to stay occupied while on generator, or a building in which you are not staying occupied on generator.
Right.
So if you're not staying occupied on the generator needs to run for 90 minutes to keep those lights on. And that's it. You do not, there's no need for anything else. If you are going to occupy, what happens is when you are on the generator is no longer your backup emergency system. It is your primary power source. And in order to occupy, you need a backup system.
Okay.
So that's where some batteries would come in, so that if that generator were to fail,
So that would only apply to the North End.
it would only apply where you're occupied.
Right.
So yeah.
Which is
If
the warming
we're going with the warming center there, and we are going to occupy during the power outage, then yeah, absolutely.
And does it have to be everywhere in the building? I mean, we're not gonna occupy.
Where you're occupied.
No, the idea is.
The warming center is
emergency lights.
basically CAF.
Then you're quarantined, then you're basically isolating the rest of your building. That's the general intent, and that you'd have to describe how you'd want to use the building. But if you weren't gonna have the classrooms part of that, then you would close the doors, and then you would only have to deal with the part that's occupied.
And yeah, where you are occupied. Yeah.
So is the intent on the North End, because it's a warming center, the power goes off, we operate on generator. If the generator dies, we evacuate the building.
You'd have to evacuate the building, because you're not gonna have any facilities there to
Right.
occupy. You lose a warming center, your HVAC's down, everything's down there.
And the
Okay.
difference between the batteries and the inverter is 6 figures.
Well, it may not be that much, I'm thinking the whole building. There's a value there, which I don't really have it
Okay.
Or how are we gonna come to closure on this?
Can I just throw my 2 cents in? So, right now, obviously, we know school's in session during the day. If we lose power and there's an emergency generator that could give us phone, internet, and lighting, we wouldn't evacuate the students. We would try and get through the end of the day. So the generator has to be able to provide some of that.
The building committee has to make a decision, because that's not the intent of the generator. It's not the intent to maintain the school for occupancy. That's gonna be a bigger generator because you have to put more systems on to allow a tenable environment. Right now, it's not designed to maintain a tenable environment for occupancy. Meaning, I have to ventilate the
That's the
building.
next item, yeah.
So on and so forth, and then you start mushering up.
I mean, this is an important question. Right now, we do have schools that do not have generator. And if we lose power, let's say at lunchtime, we don't just dismiss, we get through the day because, again, we have light, we have enough power to provide, internet service. We do have a lot of
Where's the power come from?
windows.
He said they don't have generators, so how do you?
We have some UPS.
But UPS will work for 15 minutes, half hour.
No, we get a couple of hours out of our UPSs. So, I mean, I think that's kind of
No, it's a decision.
something that we have to talk into some more detail.
Correct.
But you're not suggesting that the entire building would be operational. You're suggesting that you would be powering on backup, standby power,
Phones.
IDF rooms,
Correct.
MDF, emergency lighting.
Right. Just as an-
That's enough to keep the students in the
Right,
building.
so right now,
on power.
if we lose power during the day, we have UPSs and everything's PoE, right? So our phones are working, we've got internet service, we can get through the day. And certainly the phones are critical because if we do need to dismiss, we need to make the calls, receive calls, coordinate all that. So I need some ability to operate.
I
during the
imagine it
day.
also depends on time of day. If you lose power at 9 o'clock in the morning, the students just get there. Getting through 6 hours a day is not really gonna be practical.
Right.
In that particular case. If you lose it at 2 o'clock, that's a different story.
I mean, I guess it's just kind of thinking out loud a little bit. We need to have a minimum runtime, because even if it's 9 a.m. and we need to do an emergency dismissal, it takes 2 to 3 hours to get all that pulled together and get the buses
You
in
gotta
and get
remember-
the students out.
You have a building now, your older buildings, if they're not air conditioned, they may have just general heating, they run a lot differently. You have a fully air conditioned facility now, that requires more power in which to operate. If it's in the winter, you gotta maintain heat. You have Air Force systems or whatever, or pump systems or chillers or boilers that we run. And if it's an all electric building, it requires more power, hence a generator bigger like a North End generator versus Norton's is a much, much smaller generator. So it's something the building committee has to table and give us direction, and we can provide whatever is needed.
So there should be a basis of design document, which I think that should be in, right? With what's in and out of what's connected to the generator.
I don't think it's as granular. I think when I had spoken with,
It should be. John.
when I had spoken, I had mentioned that I think at some point, I wasn't looking for, we spoke like the day before a meeting. I was like, well, I'm not expecting to stay till midnight, put something together, but I think that's something that we were going to discuss here. And ultimately, I think that the committee should be able to see what is on the generator and something more granular, because we've got some concerns that are,
If people don't mind, I can see us getting bogged down in this for the next 5 hours. And this is going to go round and round and round, and I'm looking at the list, and there's a lot of items like this. I would like a motion to table this until later in the meeting. We can bring it back, but I'd like to be able to move on to the architects. We have some people that are here that specifically came to see the energy piece. So do I have?
Before we do that, I just want to ask one thing. Since we talked about the fact that, yes, it needs to be put together, can we just make a request that can the design team put something together, breaking down a couple of different options and what the generator
We already
size should
have
be?
it, so we can.
So, yeah, if you could bring that to us, that would be helpful.
No problem, we can send it to you.
Yeah, make your motion.
Okay. Motion to table till later in the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. And we'll talk, we'll get back to it later on in the meeting. But when I speak with you, Rich, to also talk about a process by which we can go through this without having a half-hour discussion on each item, which is a highly technical piece. We need to come in with recommendations and move these along and not get into too granular conversation.
So this is how you learn.
Oh, well, that's right, that's right. I love the idea. I just don't want us to spend too much time on it right now. So Greg, I'm turning it over to you and the architects to,
Rich,
yes.
did we forget 1G?
Open item one. Oh, did you have something?
Everything's fine, we're on schedule.
We usually do the schedule at the first meeting
That's
of
it,
each
I'm
month.
done. I go home
We
now.
do
No,
the
that's
schedule.
okay, you have.
It's number 9.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I wasn't expecting anything there, but if you had something,
Yeah, I don't think we have anything that, for today's meeting.
we usually book them in for the schedule, the first meeting of each month. All right.
Thank you.
You did.
Okay, so
Dress up,
at the request of the committee at our last meeting, was for Coda Ronan to put together a description of the alternates, life cycle costs, et cetera, for the MEP system. So with that, we have some slides. They're part of your slide packet that is part of the handout today. So with that, Craig.
Thank you, Brandon. All right, this is the disclaimer about numbers that I'm going to present tonight and what they actually mean. I will read it so everybody understands it. Energy modeling services shall be used for a purpose of providing a comparison of various energy efficiency measures to determine relative energy savings potential. Energy analysis results cannot be construed to have predictive accuracy, representing actual energy use or expenditures for a given building or its systems, as there are a number of factors that will cause discrepancies between actual and projected energy, including alteration and modification to design during construction, variability in yearly weather conditions to similar building schedules, variation in operational strategies, differences in direct and indirect connected loads, fluctuating electricity and gas rate structures, and escalation of energy costs. Basically what I'm saying, these numbers are here for comparative analysis only. Do not take them as a grain of salt, running away from here, it's gonna cost us $10 million to run the school. Okay, they're for comparison, that's what they're for. Next. So this is what our analysis is based on. These types of schools right now fall under a distribution rate of 30 from Eversource, which is basically a school that runs around 300 kilowatt demand or less. All right, electricity cost per kilowatt hour is rounded up to 15 cents. Right now it's 14 and change, just rounded up to 15. Your electrical demand per kW is $20. Again, it's an additive of cost rounded. It's not all the cents in there. This is for outside of summer periods. During the summer, it goes up an additional $5 per kW. Your propane cost per therm was used at $2.50. That was some market rates we found. Gas cost per therm, $1.32, latest trended. Our utility inflation rates running at 3%, and our discount rate 2.5. The one thing in our analysis, we kept the maintenance costs pretty simple. Yes, sir?
Question on discount rate, I'm surprised, wouldn't discount rate be inflation rate plus 2.5%? Or is that something that's dictated here?
Well, my model pulled this out as the latest trend data, and it's just kind of irrelevant, it's used across the board. So it's not really gonna skew the numbers too much, it's all consistent, they use in all the calculations. Years ago, we used to use 10% flat for everything, but we didn't do that. Okay, again, maintenance costs are assumed the same for each option. They vary slightly depending on what you have for systems, but they're not enough to sway the numbers one way or another based on the analysis. If there were big swings, I would have spent more effort on what the maintenance costs on the system types could be. All right, we're gonna get right into it. The options here, these 5 options are based on the options that were presented, what was priced for the school, based as we are to date. There was value engineering that went on during schematic design. At the end of schematic, they bring the project back into budget. The prices of the deduction or reduction of costs off of base system, which was geothermal, were prepared by O&G, and these are the numbers that were used in the life cycle cost analysis. So we have five systems looked at. Our base was geothermal with water-to-water heat pumps and indoor dedicated outside air systems to deliver fresh air to all the spaces, and chill beams. It was going to use 88 wells. The next alternate, what it means in red, is the system that we selected as part of the committee and our value engineering, but it's something through discussion, was kind of a hybrid approach of the base. It was going with air source rooftop, DOAS rooftop heat pumps with electric backup heat to feed the rooftop, all the ventilation for space, as well as to feed the gym and the cafeteria. And we're going to make a partial geothermal system, which means less wells, which would feed water heat pumps to serve the chill beams that are feeding the classrooms, office, etc. It was a partial reduction of approximately 38 wells, which was a substantial savings in the cost. And with the rooftop equipment and reduction of pipe in the building, netted us $2.3 million, which is a substantial savings. And we looked at other ones. Now, the first thing I want to point out with these 2 options is these are carbon neutral, which means no fossil fuels being used in either of the first 2 options. The final 3 options here are not carbon neutral. They're all using some form of fossil fuel, but we're using propane, as there is no natural gas in the vicinity for Norton. It's a long ways away, so propane would have been the fuel source of choice if we did. And we had propane gas-fired boilers and an air-cooled chiller, feeding an indoor DOAS unit and chill beams as one option. Second one was air-to-water heat pumps with backup propane-fired boilers. Air-to-water heat pumps are outside that produce either hot water or chill water to circulate in the building. You need a backup boiler because once it gets below 10 degrees, they don't work. So you need to have a fuel-fired source to supplement, but only for a small period of time. Still feeding indoor DOAS and air handlers. And the last option was air source DOAS rooftop heat pumps, similar to this up here, serving also the gym and the cafeteria, and smaller air-to-water heat pumps to back up the propane-fired chill beam. So what that means is you have a smaller boiler plant to feed your chill beams in the building, and you're just relying on air source heat pumps, electric backup to feed your ventilation air to the building. So the prices were different. These were the savings that were off of the base bid, geothermal being your most expensive. And the key to understanding geothermal, the wells are the cost of the geothermal system. They're very expensive to drill. It's all around $23,000 to $26,000 a well, so that cost adds up pretty quick. Predicted energy use, EUI, energy use intensity. What the energy use intensity is the total amount of energy your building uses on a square foot basis over an entire year. The base option is your lowest EUI, which means your best energy efficiency over a yearly basis. When you get to a hybrid, because we have geothermal in here, and we just added air source heat pump, we went up a little bit, but we're still a pretty efficient system. Now, when you start adding propane into all the options with what we have and the air cooled chillers, etc., your EUIs are going up in 30 to 40 range. So your EUI increases, meaning you're using more energy in your building on a yearly basis, on a KBT basis. Predicted energy costs. As I said, your most efficient is geothermal. The lowest energy cost is $178,000. Next one, the hybrid, because we do have geothermal option. They're still a pretty good cost. Yes, sir?
What's the UI of a Cheshire school right now?
What is it? I don't know what the current EUI is. I don't know that.
Just typical older.
Typical. Well, these aren't, your schools aren't air conditioned, so you're just doing heating. So your EUIs aren't really that high. As soon as you add air conditioning in, your EUI goes up. So these old schools, I don't really have your energy analysis here, but your old schools, especially Norton, is an oil-fired plant. So your energy efficiency is going to be fairly low. Your EUI is going to be probably in the 40s.
Our data indicates they're between 50 and 75 right now.
That's what they're running right now?
Yeah.
Old insulated uninsulated buildings?
Right.
Yeah, ventilation through the windows, et cetera. Yeah, not very efficient. So today's, a baseline building today, okay, when you run the energy code, with the way the energy code is, base baseline is in the mid to upper 40s. So these type of systems here are just a little bit better than baseline buildings, okay? We don't do too many schools in these range anymore. We're striving to be in the low 20s, in the high teens. The only way we make that is if we go with geothermal. We can't do it with these other systems.
I'm sorry to keep on you, but the base system, geothermal, there's no rooftop ductwork, it's
No, this particular system has all the equipment inside the building.
all the equipment. So
Everything's inside, yes.
Option 1B or 1A,
Option 1B here adds some rooftop equipment.
keep up with all the ductwork and stuff.
Well, the ductwork will be actually,
Ductwork is still inside.
will come inside the building through curbs, so you don't have it running on ductwork on the roof, but you'll have equipment on the roof.
There's still room for solar panels.
There's still room for solar, but this will diminish the amount of solar you can put on the roof. And that's one, and you bring up a good point about solar. So what does this mean, EUI? Granted, if you're all electric, you can offset the all electricity with your solar. If you run a hybrid approach where you have electric and propane, you can still offset electric, but you're only gonna be offsetting electric and not the fossil fuel based. Now, one thing to think about, the higher EUI, the larger your PV array needs to be to offset your electrical cost, if you wanted to try to offset the entire thing. All right? Another thing I'm gonna say is these numbers here are more elevated now because these are schematic level numbers. This is based on a lot of early assumptions. We don't have kitchen loads yet. We're making an assumption what that may be. We don't have schedules pinned down in the building. We're kind of guesstimating right now. And I'll tell you a little thing. You had mentioned the gentleman there with the glasses, with the thing. You had mentioned about schools that don't have any type of history.
Yes.
Manchester, which you heard earlier that Greg mentioned, the school they did, that's the first net zero school that came online this last year. Mansfield just came online a month or so later. Both of them are net zero. Both of them are running EUIs in the high 17s. When they both started the schools, Mansfield, because I designed Mansfield, our schematic design EUI with geothermal and water to air to water heat pumps, water air heat pumps, was a 23. When we got through design development, the EUI dropped to 21 because we got more information. When we finished the last model in CDs, the as installed condition, the EUI was 17.3. So the amount of energy that that building consumes is very low and very efficient. It has a PV array that'll completely offset its total. It's going to be a net zero building. Same thing with Manchester. Manchester came out 17.8.
That's great. Can you share that information?
I don't know if it's public information.
I'm sure.
Tell you what it is.
Public schools.
Public schools. So I mean that's kind of what I'm just pointing out the design. I don't know if the energy model wasn't produced by me, so I don't think I can't share that.
And those are first in Connecticut.
Those are the first two net zero schools in Connecticut. In 2012, CHOPE, the Kohler Environmental Center, was commissioned. That is the first net zero facility of 45,000 square feet. It's been online now for 11 years. It was an EUI of 27 at that time because we were using equipment that was available at that time. It's still net zero today. It is 45,000 square feet. Students live there. It's a dormitory, classroom building, a cafeteria. It's got a greenhouse. Still net zero. Okay. But that has geothermal. It has all the bells and whistles. Very efficient. But anyway, I digress. I just want to tell you how the process works. This is where we are now. These numbers will drop. Life cycle costs. Here's what everybody's interested in. You'll see that of all these numbers, your best life cycle cost is the hybrid approach, your lowest present worth calculation based on 20 years. Your geothermal, the reason this is the highest life cycle cost, the main reason is because of the 88 wells that have to be installed. That is a heck of a lot more than the 50 that we're putting in for this. And that $2.3 million in a 20-year life cycle is very difficult to overcome with only a very small difference in energy consumption in the building.
Did you do any higher years, 40 years?
We didn't go to 4, we only ran it out to 20.
It's good at 50 at least.
Understood, but traditionally, the life cycles only go 20 years out, okay?
What is that number though? 2,498,850.
That's your present worth calculation. What this is your today's cost to install plus 20 years of energy costs associated with it. Brought back to today. This is your present
Just
worth.
for that HVAC system.
This is just for this is not the entire bill. We're talking HVAC only, okay? And the problem is the delta. The base bid is what we established everything on, and then these are all deducts from the full geothermal system. When you take these, this is a deduct right off your present worth calculation. It basically puts you, you're fighting uphill battle because to overcome this value, this system would have to be a hell of a lot more energy efficient. Now, granted, if this EUI can probably drop much faster than this will because we don't have any of this electric air-cooled stuff, and it probably will. When it goes, it'll be a bigger spread, but I don't think the spread will ever be big enough to overcome this delta.
In 20 years.
In 20 years, no. Now, geothermal, that well field will last 50, 60 years without a problem.
And
Your equipment inside will not.
how many years would it take to overcome, do you think?
Well, at this value, it'll take too long. There's only a $12,000 difference.
Yeah.
So you're never going to overcome that almost $1.8 million.
So on one, to one be 20 years, gonna be replacing all that rooftop stuff.
20, 25 years, he's got to be replaced.
With the geothermal, because it's,
Well, the geothermal has compressor equipment inside. You're going to have water heat pumps that will have to be replaced in probably 25 years as well. So there is equipment cost. The cost of those water heat pumps would probably be less than what these would be at that particular time. But again, trying to overcome this is what's going to be the problem. It's going to be the issue. You do geothermal. If you wanted to be a full net zero building, this is what you wanted to do. You want to stay geothermal, and I'll tell you why. Because, as I said, as we drive this thing down, our energy, as we complete our design, these are going to drop. The EUIs will drop, and these will drop faster than this because we have a better COPs, et cetera, with the heat pumps than we will with this. But, and this will also keep, if you do go PV, your array a lot smaller. I'll give an example for Norton. A PV array size at EUI 25 is 703 kW. At an EUI of 20, it's 563 kW. So you're dropping down 140 kW in PV. That equates to a lot of this per square foot. You need 25,885 square feet. Currently, I don't have how much PV we can fit on Norton, but we probably can't fit the total amount of area we need on Norton based on the configuration of the roof to offset the total electric. No matter what, we'd have to do something else if that was even on the table. But this is all about just comparing what the results are. This is what the building committee has selected to go with the hybrid. And the main reason was because we have such a big reduction, and it helps bring this project onto budget and still give you a fairly efficient project, but not as efficient as we could go with a full geothermal approach.
Can you explain the LCCA, the column one more time with the?
So the life cycle cost analysis, the purpose of that is to take your today's cost to install plus the utility cost over a 20-year period and bring it back to today's dollars. And the value in today's dollar with the least amount of cost is your better approach.
So that's all the equipment in that 740,000 is all the equipment plus all the utility.
No, this isn't the cost of the project. This is what the value of this alternative is. You don't use this as the system cost. Okay, because this is not the whole thing. Everything in here is just off of the base bid, off of the geothermal. These are deductions off of the geothermal. The system cost is much bigger than the numbers you see. None of these have the total cost. We took the base bid. Say geothermal MEP system costs $6 million, right? This system here is $2.3 million less than the $6 million or whatever it may be. Okay, this is just a delta off the base bid. We're not using the total value.
Is the 740,000 a delta as well?
No, that's your present worth calc. That's your present worth value, which uses a bunch of interest rates and discount factors, etc. So your lowest present worth gives you your best value.
So I mean, eventually what you're saying is the importance of eventually doing PV in either case.
If you're going all electric building, anything you can do to PV, because this is what's real important. If it's $190,000 to operate this building, and say you can put in 50% of your PV, right? So you can cut this value almost in half. So your capital operating costs say be $80,000. Your electric bill would never be zero. I'll tell you why. PVs only offset your kilowatt hours, your consumption. You're still going to have demand charges. You're still going to pay that unless your demand of your PV exceeds what you're doing. But typically it won't during the winter. Definitely won't, because you don't produce as much energy during the winter as you do during the summer. So you won't have a zero electric bill. On a residential, it's different because you're only paying kilowatt hours. You're paying consumption only. On a commercial, you pay for demand, and you're not going to offset your demand. There's always going to be a charge.
I mean, you could do it with, future, looking forward to less expensive battery type operations to collect the solar.
If you had batteries, you can curb your value, curb your consumption and possibly your demand.
And if you want a little demo ground-based PV unit for instructing your children about the value of it.
Oh, you can always have an instructional event, sure. Yes, you can.
We got a megawatt plant less than a quarter mile north of the North End School, but I don't think there's an option of switching our net metering option to do that.
Well, net meter is a problem too, because utility companies don't pay you for your electricity. They'll zero out your meter, but they won't pay you for your excess.
I just think it behooves the BOE to really think forward about projects for PV. Sooner the better.
Do you have more to go over?
Well, basically the same exact analysis was done for North End. And the thing about, that's the next slide. Actually, I should say, this is a graphical representation of the energy consumption, where this is your PV, this was the option 2, which is the hybrid approach, and then this is where some propane options were added, where you see that the cost goes up. The next slide is same thing with life cycle. Your hybrid approach has the lowest present work cost versus your base, the geothermal, and these are the other options, which are all relatively close in life cycle cost, which is your gas options. North End. So North End went over the exact same systems. The difference in North End is the geothermal system was available to fit within the budget, and it was the base approach. That's why you see this as red. It didn't turn out to be the lowest life cycle cost. The lowest life cycle cost again became the hybrid, but I'm going to qualify this, and this for ONG benefit. The stars mean these are not numbers that were qualified. I took the potential savings from Norton and just escalated up by the difference in square foot to give us a delta. So this is just relative. This is not a validated number. But I don't think this number is going to be off by a great factor, because by taking a number of wells out, my equipment gets smaller, I'm going to be in the ballpark. Even if it was a smaller number, still trying to overcome this differential, I'm still going to be the best option with the hybrid approach.
Hey, good question.
Yes.
I don't think we saw 7F as an option for the North End.
No, we didn't. That's what I said. These are the exact same.
Well, I'm not done. So what I'm seeing though is we could save an additional 2.9 million, you're saying, by going with that option there.
2 point something.
Whatever the number is, you
Right.
come up with a number, but it's gonna be in the ballpark. It's not $1.
So there's an option there, yes, yes. This didn't come up.
So knowing that, I
North End.
feel like we should go back to that option.
It's another option we can explore. We didn't do it, I have to validate this, these are quick calculations, 62, it may be 70 wells, it may not be 62. This was just, again, all I did was do a straight comparison.
I understand
to this
yeah,
one.
I'm just saying,
to give us an
it's not something that we said, oh, well, we could have saved but you're showing us 2.9 million. We said, no, we weren't given that option. So
This option didn't exist. The only reason this option came up is when we hit the value for Norton, we were so far, we had to come up with some options. I reached back for different out of the box type things and came up with this option.
that was a nice out of the box idea.
Because we have not been approaching this option in any project. We've been trying to stick with this because everybody's been trying to get this down as low as possible. All the schools have been doing is net zero, and they want to be as low as possible. This is the only way to get down to those high teens and keep your PVs as small as possible.
2 quick questions. I think they're quick.
You had mentioned net zero being different from carbon neutral. Is that like a 30-second explanation?
Well,
of that?
the definition of carbon neutral is you're not using any fossil fuels in which to generate any electricity or anything in your building.
Okay.
Okay, using all electrical approach. Net zero, all net zero is you are putting a PV or some other source on your site, wind, solar, whatever it may be, that produces enough electrical power that offsets the power you use on your site. So at the end of the day, whatever you consume, you produce to overcome that, to be net zero. You zero out your energy.
So if you did that option right there, the geothermal, it would not necessarily be net zero unless we move forward and did some solar as a likely scenario.
That is correct.
That would be, okay, so both of those are carbon neutral, but not net zero, because what I thought you were saying before, geothermal would be net zero, so.
No, geothermal is the best approach if you want to do net zero because you can get your lowest UI
Understood.
out of a geothermal system compared to these other alternatives.
Thank you. And other question, I'm wondering, I mentioned it to Justin before, actually, have you guys had a chance to look at the tax impact of the IRA? If there's any sort of benefit there?
We're looking at another school right now, and it's in the works to see what kind of options are available.
Okay, so what I just heard you say is there might be some financial impact here, just to your point, because of a law that got passed in the past like year or two. And I only saw guidance, the first guidance I saw on it was in July, and it was like, hey, we need to figure this out.
That's kind of how it is now. We have another project going on which is all geothermal. There's a mandate. That particular project said we had to be less than an EUI of 25, so it forced us into a geothermal system. The project was budgeted. It's another school project. The project is not right now applying for net zero. It's being net zero ready, but it's being designed to be as low as possible EUI as it can be in the event they do choose to go and offset it with some PV. So, and that project is being looked at right now. It has not been concluded what part of that's going to be available for use on the project yet, but still being looked into.
And I'm going to throw one more thing out here, which is just, do you have an idea of when this becomes written in stone? You cannot change it in any way in relation to getting clarity on potential tax impacts where there might be some savings. How long is it going to take to get the tax and some clarity on the tax relative to when you have to make decisions? Or, I mean, the building committee, sorry. When decision needs to be made.
I don't have an answer to yet because I'm still waiting to figure out. We're still waiting to figure out the other one at this moment.
Yeah, no.
It's tied up in federal regulation, is that the issue?
No, it's just a matter of somebody coming up with the right approach or understanding the regulations of what can and cannot be used. When you use the Inflation Reduction Act, it's all by American. You have to have all American products. You can't have any other systems that are American. So with our other school, we had some problems with certain type of system we can't use. So by going all by American, it limits you to certain equipment you can use, and it puts other stuff on that you can't as well.
So we're in design development, and that's gonna run through, what, December? I assume you're gonna have all this locked in by the time.
Oh, no, we have to have a decision before we get designed out. We gotta be able to move forward. What we're doing internally, the system's the same, right? Chill beam the same. The plant, we have some time to change. We're gonna come up with our sizing so we can do it. If we end switching from this to this, whatever we do on Norton would just be used here at a little bigger scale.
And we're in with Eversource to get some rebate money there. Would that be equally available for either of those choices?
Yes, it doesn't matter because Eversource is just looking at this number. They want to know how low they're going to give you your money based on your UI, and it's going to be compared against the baseline. The farthest we're apart from explain what a baseline building is. A baseline building is a building that just is designed to meet the energy code, bare minimum. That means minimum insulation in your walls, minimum fenestration, minimum roof insulation, minimum equipment efficiency. That's your baseline, and that's usually in the 40s, somewhere in the 40s. They'll pay you on how far you pay on $1, $1.25, $1.50 off deduction of that EUI is what they're going to pay your incentive on. they're also gonna pay you additional incentives. And it's unfortunate that these numbers here are including an incentive. Eversource right now is paying a fair amount of money, up to $1 million, to offset geothermal. Okay, and it's based on the tonnage you put in. So right now we qualify for $1 million incentive here. It's actually included as a help. This one here, we only get 750 because we reduced the number of wells. We would get an additional $750,000 incentive, plus the dollars per square foot saved on the reduction in EUI. So that money is accounted for in these present worth calculations.
But is it in the initial cost? That difference between the 2.8 million?
No, it's not in here. It's only it's only used in the present worth calculation.
But when Chuck was mentioning that option 7F is 2.8 million, potentially some ballpark, is that inclusive of $1 million?
No, see what happens, that $1 million, you don't get that $1 million after you pay. So you have to pay up front, then you get money back.
Right, but the base, all right, but none of the rebates.
None of the
No.
rebates are in that cost estimate.
Nope.
So it won't impact what we can spend to do the bill that's, but the
Correct.
town will get a nice check.
Yeah,
after
town will
the
get the
fact.
money, town will get the check back. That's correct.
But we're still having to work with.
He's going on this occasion.
But we're all taxpayers, so
This
it's
is a
all
school project.
We're following
Yeah.
We're following path 2 on the rebates. So, which is a high efficiency building, but we're not locked into being, path 1 is 25 or less. We're not locked, we'll still be less than that. We just won't get the added benefit if we're down. We never knew where we were gonna be in this building until we chose path 2. Okay.
Yeah, one more question. Vin, do you know what the MEP cost is at Highland per year right now?
I can look, but I don't have it offhand.
So I calculated, I used to work about Mansfield, and if I did the numbers, if we didn't have PV at Mansfield, and that building is an EUI of 17.3, utility costs per year are $127,000, which is like $1.7 per square foot, based on the overall school. For an EUI of 25, that cost goes up to around $190,000 for an 80,000 square foot building if you run an EUI 25. That's the difference in the cost per year. That's without any PV. That's if they just ran the building, didn't offset, that's what their cost would have been. The fact that we have PVs on there, they're only paying $60,000 of advance charges.
Just a quick question, we're here talking about schools and net present values. And I think it's important to try to get both the schools and net present values. Our town has a couple big energy using buildings. You know, we do have a swimming pool that uses an incredible amount of natural gas. And we have our own wastewater treatment plant, it's crazy the amount of energy. And the high school's really up there too. So we really want to limit our exposure to utility costs in the future. We really should try to get to net zero on both the schools.
I don't disagree. I mean, I love to put it all in and do what we can, but again, and I've done a presentation for Eversource. We started a presentation off saying any building can be net zero. And then we showed a field of like 4 acres of PV panels, saying, yes, as long as you have the room to put the PV panels. Right? We're not gonna use wind, it just doesn't happen around here. But yes, it's always a good thing, but it has to be realistic too.
Well, we also have to work within the budget constraints.
That is as well, that's
And
correct.
that's the issue that we ran into for Norton School. We needed to reduce the cost in order to stay within the money that's been allocated by the town and approved by the state.
Hence the hybrid approach.
So if we said, yeah, we want to do something that's going to cost $2, $4, $5 million more, you got to do something else with the rest of the program that would devastate it. And that was the problem we ran into in trying to reduce that budget by almost $10 million.
Correct.
There's also been nothing that I can recall that says we're shooting for net zero.
No, there was never anything in the specs.
No.
And in fact, there was nothing in the specs that said that these buildings should be geothermal. I believe there was something in there that said we can look at that or something.
That's how we started. We started to get your best approach, try to get there always is a cost. From a life cycle cost, geothermal very seldom pans out because of the big first cost. It's always one of the first things gets veered up. We're working on Farmington. We never even started with geothermal, but we had an air-cooled boiler and chiller. we had a big budget on that job. We beat you down to package rooftops.
Yeah.
So that's the only way to bring that high school budget. That's, the energy went up, they're gonna pay more, but that's what they need to get the building and keep it
And the
working.
budget for our two schools that went to referendum did not include money to do a geothermal system.
No, it had a little bit.
They added $1 million per building for energy efficiency.
Right.
And I don't know how much the total amount is for a geothermal system, but as you said, $5-6 million.
Oh, the wells in here for this 104 wells, you were almost $2.7 million just for the well field and bringing it in. That was just the wells themselves, not including the equipment. So that was a big amount. That's right.
What would it take to extend the life cycle out to more than 20 years, to 30 to 50?
We have to get some estimates from the CM as far as what estimated equipment prices. We'd have to get today's prices and estimate them out and see what that price is going to be. I don't think it's going to matter because again, when you get out year 25, you're going to be replacing equipment pretty much equally. The only difference is if we had an indoor DOAS unit, you wouldn't have to replace that unit. You'd probably have replaced a wheel once or twice within that time frame. But you wouldn't be replacing wholesale equipment. So there is some potential savings. But even if I put it out to 30 years, we're not going to make up that difference.
Craig, isn't the math, wouldn't the math be the difference between the 3.1 million and the 1.5 million divided by $40,000 difference per year of utility costs? So that can be like 80 years.
Oh, the payback is too high. It is. Hey, you look at just the difference in here. The cost is 40,000. It takes forever. There's no payback. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, just on the point about the net zero, I don't know what the council sent to the building committee, but I'm on the board. And if I recall correctly, I made a motion requesting the ed specs to include net zero in it.
We said was kind of, if possible, we would like to be net zero energy. We did have some
And there was
language
something,
around.
I didn't want any demands or anything, but just to have it out there as a discussion. And from what I see, you said the top two options there are both potentially net zero.
No, they could go net zero because they're all electric. Yes.
Yeah, they're potentially net zero, but that would be like a second action for either one of them after the project's done. So it's saying, I mean, I feel like either of those options would comport with what the Board of Ed voted on unanimously.
We carried the schematic, the rough PV size based on an EUI at 25, and I gave you the rough number of what size it would be. And you're paying around $2 to $2.50 a watt for installed systems. It adds up pretty quick. PV itself doesn't pay back either, just FYI, because it's still a big outlay for what you get back. It takes a long time. You're doing it for other reasons. And the problem is when you're a utility, a non-tax-paying entity, you can't take advantage of the renewable energy credits. That's supposed to be changing, but and if you want to be net zero, you can't even use them. You have to sundown the recs if you want to be registered. So you're not supposed to take the benefit of it if you want to be net zero. Truly net zero. So you're supposed to sundown the recs and not have the advantage. So if you go to a PPA and they sell it to you, the only difference is they take the tax credit, they take the renewable energy credits, but they sell you power at a reduced rate, such at 9 cents, 10 cents a kilowatt hour instead of paying 14, 15. So the only thing is you save 5 cents or so. But then that escalates up. They usually do that for the first 5 years or so, depending on how you negotiate the contract. And then you have an escalation rate out to year 20. And at year 20, it's all free and clear at that point. But your system is degraded 10% in those 20 years, but you still get free energy.
Did Mansfield or Manchester use a PPA, or did they buy their solar system?
Mansfield bought theirs. Manchester, I believe, went PPA.
No, they
did buy it? They didn't buy it?
Both of them.
Southern Connecticut, that building just came online. They went a PPA. The first state net zero project just went online. It's being tracked starting at September 1st. They used the PPA route. They already had 3 megawatts on their campus. They added another 600 kW on just to support their new business school. But they went PPA because it was their out of pocket. They didn't have any money in their budget to purchase, and now they're paying 9 cents a kilowatt hour versus 19 cents what UI charges them. So they're saving 10 cents a kilowatt hour. Again, it's a similar graph of showing the energy cost of the options we just talked about, and the life cycle will show you the same thing on this page. It's just in graphic form. And then this is too big of a delta to try to overcome for a full system versus the hybrid, based on what we determined. But if I continue on this path of this building wanting to be a net zero, we don't have enough physical roof area to support the amount of array for an EUI between 25 and 28. You have to supplement somewhere else to even get there, if that was a decision. Once you start putting equipment up there, you lose more surface area, et cetera. So it would be a difficult goal to achieve. When we designed Mansfield, that building was designed specifically nothing on the roof, everything's internal to meet its goal. And the building was oriented, pitched roofs, everything, et cetera, for a big southern exposure to capitalize. We're actually producing more energy than we even anticipated, which is great.
Thank you very much.
That's pretty much it. So.
Wonderful, and obviously gives us some
Yeah.
ideas for future meeting. And we'll try to move that along in terms of where we're headed. Any other comments, sir? Okay. And we will move on. Justin, it's all yours.
Okay, there's a pretty big update here with a lot of material, two independent presentations that we included. So in terms of the stuff that we have in progress, we're scheduling that additional geotechnical investigation. We're scheduling that for Norton over Columbus Day break, so that we will not impact school operations. As you had mentioned, we had received some additional comments regarding the Norton exterior design. And we also listed the MEP VM options, life cycle, and energy use analysis. As you had mentioned, Rich, earlier, we have the town council presentation, our working group meeting, our community meetings, as well as our schematic design review meeting with the Office of Grants Administration. Attachments for all of those, let's see, the working group meeting minutes from 9/12, the copy of the town council presentation, copy of the presentation from our Tuesday working group meeting are in this packet, the bound packet, as well as the schematic design review checklist. And we received from Barbara Fabiani, our project manager and reviewer, her copy of this checklist with the formal acceptance of the Norton SDR. We received that this afternoon. So from a state perspective, we're on to Cincinnati, design development for both projects. That's Bill Belichick.
You're quoting Bill Belichick?
Have you no shame?
Oh, I just saw the line of where Giants and Patriots are.
Yes, I did.
You crossed over the Mason-Dixon line.
I did.
Yeah, you get up in the Glastonbury area, it's all Boston oriented. You get down here, it starts getting a little more New York oriented. Although you can still probably find about 50-50 Boston Red Sox versus Yankees.
So that's the kind of technical update. I will say that we are scheduling the commissioning kickoff meeting, the Connecticut High Performance Building checklist. We're looking to schedule that for next week. In general, we're trying to align some of our consultant internal team meetings for Thursdays. So as we start getting into some of our more focused, facilities meetings, we'll look to target Thursdays as those days that we've asked our consultants to leave Thursdays open, so that we can, usually it's much better if you just ask the team to make sure that you're keeping a day open rather than try and say, hey, can we meet you meet Tuesday of this week or Wednesday of the following week, if you just say, let's plan on Thursdays, it'll be better. The only other thing that I just wanted to mention, we did bring some of the schematic design summaries. I don't think we necessarily need to go through a full presentation, but we did present, as I think this committee is aware, we did present updated renderings to the town council before we presented them to this committee for the North End. So I figured we would show these as part of this meeting so that they become part of this meeting's record. So this was.
Let me state that they sent these renderings to myself and Jeff Solon ahead of time, asked if it was okay that they put these out in front of the town council. And we gave our permission with the proviso that it very clearly be stated that these are hot off the press. The committee had not yet seen them, and the committee had not approved them. And I stated that, and then Justin reiterated that when he put it on there.
Yeah.
But knowing that there were some very strong feelings on the part of the council, it was felt that when we saw what had been put together here, that this was something that we really wanted the council to see while we were doing that presentation.
And that sometimes happens. It's not our intention to kind of leapfrog the authority of this building committee, but understanding that a lot of the specific comments relative to this design were originated in some of those meetings, and being a presentation that was in between our NGSBC meetings, that's when this arose. So would anybody like us to go through this? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. There were some comments about, bring in some more natural or more barn-like colors, reduction in some of the expanses of glazing. We think some of the architectural typology that we have here kind of fits in with that theme.
Do we know what material is being used on this vertical white?
Yeah, it's the cement board. So I think there was a question earlier from the public about the types of materials and the various materials. So the upper portions of the building are all the what we'd be E2, really the cement brick board. So a very durable, low maintenance cementitious based product, the cement board, high pressure.
Is there a cost difference between that and brick?
I think they were 60 for that, 60 a square foot and 50 for brick, so they're pretty close. And then, so the lower portions of kind of the right are the veneer stone, and then the masonry, the brick, and all we're really doing is changing the tones of the similar materials, so you have a durable exterior facade. There's not, I think, let's see. So the variety of the materials, it comes in the color differential less than the change of material type, I guess is what I was trying to say.
So the section like over on the left, that's more of a grayish?
Yeah.
Is that, okay.
So-
I don't know
so-
if that, just the way the picture came out, or if that's.
Yeah, so this, more like a putty, and then this is more of a white, but it's the same material, base material, just a different color, so that what we're trying to do is keep some consistency and continuity of the types of material, so we don't change the.
This design did meet with tremendous support when it was presented to the town council. Chuck was there, he can.
I think they actually clapped.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they did. I have just one comment on the tall structure in the center there. I like the shape of it and that it fits in there. I think there was a comment to make it more of a silo. I would not listen to that if it was me. I didn't like that look when we saw it on another one, so I do like the way it looks. It's a little
agree.
lighthouse-ish, but I think it fits in there.
Yeah, I agree. Plus, when I mentioned that to Jeff, he said they have all kinds of issues with round facilities with water leakage.
Yeah, I'd rather not have it be round and try to flash it, so this is more, it tapers enough. the flashing.
And I like that it's like incorporated in, there's like a little nook there, up above at the, I think it's at the top of the stairs or somewhere
I
close,
think
right?
Ben's
Somewhere up
office is gonna be at the very top.
Yeah. Maybe it's in the
That's the
library.
British watch.
It's about,
It's,
yeah.
it's like I'll be put into a basement and sealed in.
Entombed.
Exactly.
We'll put a nice little plaque on there for you.
I did get a suggestion to put a weather vane on top of that structure.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
not
Something very farmish.
Put that on there.
I'm just having,
Thank you for sharing.
I'm having a really hard time squaring this with the feedback that the spaces were not playful enough and childlike enough. This to me seems like we're sending children to a farm to work. I mean, it's beautiful, and you have captured the farmland spectacularly, but it looks so much like a farm now that I really feel like I would be sending my child into the fields to work.
But look at the interior
I haven't
designs.
seen the interior.
Well, there's some things in there about interiors, and, I know that's what the working group has been doing. I mean, it's very colorful, very playful. I don't know, is it in this package?
It's in the overall,
Oh, the bigger one.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, so, to your point, if I can pick that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is our responsibility to make sure that some of these interior spaces are dynamic, welcoming, inspirational for the children that are in there. And so one of the things that we're working through in some of our room by room analysis are first getting, all of the criteria for what needs to be in there, et cetera. But as we continue to have our interior design conversations, start talking about the thematic elements that are within colors, graphic wall protection, that type of stuff. So,
And these aren't actual pictures, these are.
right.
One very small myth. Very rarely do you see brick above stone.
I'm not sure that is brick, or is it?
I'm not sure. Are you thinking that this is brick?
Yeah, I'm thinking that needs to
That-
be all the way down to the ground.
This isn't intended to be brick. That was part of the wood, but maybe we have to revisit that after some of the comments. So the only piece that's like actual wood was the piece wrapping in and the underside of these canopies to kind of warm it up. But I guess we could certainly look at playing with the brick versus the stone. So the comments we heard were on Norton, but if they apply to both, maybe this becomes just an all brick and.
We have one gentleman who's in the building trades and just talked about making sure that these buildings are as maintenance-free as possible. And by including exterior wood, he was concerned that that would require regular maintenance and recognized that Cheshire's maintenance budget is limited. So he was strongly against having any exterior wood on the buildings.
I can see what you're saying, if we do,
I mentioned that last meeting, I think.
So, maybe we do change it to brick and bring it all the way down.
Yeah, because I think that offsets the element.
Yeah.
of having the continuity of the water table.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, any other, we also have the corresponding renderings for Norton that probably are of more interest, given some of our.
Yeah, I'm not certain where we're going there, but I think that's something that we need to.
Side comment, if you were looking for realism, the old rusty tricycle, I don't know how many kids are really using those anymore.
My concern is partly, you look at the site. The north side is on a big, wide open field. The driveways, the greenway in between. and that
We're
sort of
talking
thing.
about north end or?
Well, I'm talking about the north end.
Yeah.
Which I think is really dramatic, and you look at it now that you've got that rendering and you're comparing it, it even makes this one look, somewhat less. You've got a lot of driveway in the front, You've got a large mass on the right. It's just the way the building's laid out. It's sideways. So that you don't drive up, and Dennis had pointed this out way back when, but you don't drive up as you do on the north end saying, wow, there's the cafeteria, the gymnasium, the media center. You drive up saying, there's, a classroom wing, which is looking out on the parking lot, 45% of your classes.
I'm not convinced you're going to see this portion of the building for a large majority of your approach. So this piece is really kind of, in my mind's eye, the side of the building, because there's vegetation and a hill, some change in plane here and established
But it's
vegetation.
angled away from you, and you don't have the big masses that you do with the north end. So
What do
you
you
don't,
mean, what's angled away from you?
the building is angled to the left, to the,
You mean this piece?
no, I
the
mean
whole-
where the entrance and the calf, that whole section.
So do you think maybe straightening this out so you have?
I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm
Yeah,
just
no,
saying-
me too.
Yeah, I'm just saying, that right now, the way it's laid out is that mass of the classroom wing is jutted out towards you. The big facility,
Yeah.
the gym, the calf, the entranceway is somewhat recessed. And then, of course, you don't have the roof lines and stuff that you have on the north end. So it just doesn't come across as dramatic or as unique as the North End School. And I'm just talking off the top of my head, I'm sorry. I don't have a design in mind or anything like that.
I guess my question is, the last time we met here, we got different reviews of this. And what I'm struggling with, and I've heard the comments and seen and read the emails, I guess, is it a style? Do we want to drift more towards the traditional? Because it's very traditional on North End now. Because that's kind of what some of the folks at the community set meetings had said, which is fine, because this is much more contemporary. They're definitely two different buildings.
Yeah.
And maybe we're doing a disservice by showing that when you really should be showing from here to the left.
Well, the
Dennis,
rendering
you
is
were at
from you're off to a far right angle in the parking lot with this rendering, right?
Yeah, if you go to the site, so really,
That's a straight on.
that most of this corner right here is right off the screen is all vegetation. So we're shifted a little bit. So this is, I guess my point in all of that is that that's the piece that a large majority of the people are going to see.
But that view would work if you were in England, driving on the left side of the road. If you drive on the right side of the road, view skews to the right. So the first thing you're gonna see is you go to the side plan.
Sorry.
As you drive in, the whole right side's clipped off and blocked by
Yeah.
vegetation.
Yeah, that's
and property.
this here. These are all trees here. So we were kind of standing here. We took all of this out and all of this out and stretched the view so you could see that portion. But and that's where maybe we created our own. You're not going to see much of the right of this facade until you get to like here.
Well, because you can't even see, because my kids went to Camp Quinnipiac at Norton School, so I had to bring them to the back every day where the parking lot is. And you can't even tell that there's property over there at all.
'Cause it's so heavy.
Right.
But yeah, it's just trees and a hill. There's a big hill with
And
a
it's
wall.
also hidden by the gym.
Well,
Dennis,
that's
you
true,
were
it
at
is
the
in Bennington.
meeting yesterday, maybe, how would you summarize some of the concerns that were expressed?
Yet, I think if I were to kind of try to summarize an hour and a half into one sentence, I think the feeling was that it did not match the context of the neighborhood.
What do we think the context of the neighborhood is? Is it more traditional?
Well, you're not gonna get an argument from me, but I think the last time we met, my feeling was that that looked a lot, much more urban than it needed to be. And I think what's missing here maybe is a couple of gable roofs.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, is it needs to migrate more towards a traditional style building. Yeah.
I think people are looking at the kind of houses that are in the area. They're also going back to the original theme of, woods and trails and that sort of thing. And they're looking and saying, well, this isn't really reminiscent of woods and trails.
Well, I think the concept, and I think Ernest did a pretty good job last time, trying to bring in the idea of the tree house and those, so if that was kind of the concept we were headed down, and that's why we arrived at these kinds of things, like as if kids were building a tree house in so that's why nothing's straight.
Yeah.
But
I think that comes across to most people as being very modern.
right, so maybe now we're talking more of like a traditional camp instead, and maybe that's the direction we head. So, yeah, I'm just struggling to. The reason why I'm asking is because we want to address the comments.
Right.
We're sitting here at.
You went back and reviewed the last committee meeting to make sure that we didn't miss anything.
No, it was fairly positive.
Yeah.
And I think, but then you came out with the design for the north end, and we got feedback from both the town council, other people, and the meeting that we had at Norton yesterday. So I think that, we needed to take a step back. But no, you're right. I mean, compared to the first two iterations, this was met with a much more positive outlook last time. But I think now that we've gotten some more feedback and stuff, it's not quite hitting the mark.
For what it's worth, for my 2 cents, I try to speak on the technical and I know my lane, and I don't have the words to communicate what I'm looking at and to discuss aesthetics, but every time Dennis comments about it, I feel like he hits the mark, and I agree with what he's saying. In the wording, it's where it looked a little more urban. And man, that's a perfect way of saying what I didn't know how to say. And early on, there were some other comments that you had mentioned, and I was like, so put me in his camp. If we're looking to say what are other people thinking, just you've got another person on the board here that's on the committee that agrees with what Dennis is saying. It just seems to hit home when he says it. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what.
So do you mind me asking, because what we're trying to do is kind of probe with some of these general comments, like misses the mark, doesn't feels less residential. We're trying to extrapolate that into what architecturally might be some strategies. So do you feel like the existing school is urban?
The existing school?
Yeah, Norton. Does it fit in the community?
No.
No, it's John.
Well,
It's very square.
Well, one of the comments that we heard last night was it's a beautiful building. So,
Yeah, I don't know a lot of people
so
who
we won't
say that.
okay.
I mean, it's a
We won't take that.
It's a hodgepodge of additions. The section on the left has those ugly windows.
Well, I did try and add some kind of context to that comment from my perspective, and that is in 2011, we replaced all the nasty windows with new windows. We replaced the transite panel with these bluish colored maintenance-free panels. And so I think to that person's eyes, it might be, wow,
I don't know if it
looks
was
good.
well. I think he was
That's
looking and
just my
saying, you
guess.
know what? The brick has held up pretty well. And I think that more than anything else, if you looked at straight away where the gym wall is, it for a building that's whatever, 70 years old, it's held up well. I sure as heck wouldn't look at it and say, it's a beautiful building or anything. I think that Highland has actually held up pretty well for a school that's been around since the 1970s.
And Doolittle, that's a charming little
I love that.
character of a school, right? They're just all different designs. And I think that's kind of where we are.
And Norton really is a hodgepodge.
When I
And I
look at
think
this, I don't feel cozy. I don't know, again, I'm not Dennis with the good words, but, you know, when you think of a neighborhood, you want something that's homey and cozy and comfortable, and I look at this and I don't feel bad, but I don't feel that.
Well, most people in that neighborhood have always known Norton the way it is. So it's part of the fabric of North Brooksville.
It's a walkable school. There's a lot of kids who walk from the various neighborhoods to that school. So I think they're looking for something that fits into the neighborhood.
Yeah, something that, I mean, it's funny because I do feel like there's this dissonance because I feel like that neighborhood is pretty modern. Like everything seems to be built post 50s, except for that one house that is next to it. That's now not doing so well. But something that always strikes me when I visit Norton is the like stone benches and monuments that they've erected about the community around the space, and that feels very like backyard garden, like this
Feels
is coming
authentic.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah, like coming home. So maybe they're building that space because there's so much modern stuff around. I mean, even the church across the street, right? Super modern.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to emulate
It's
that.
not because of that.
Yeah, that's true. And it is like
Church.
70s modern.
You don't go around.
That's fair.
So, so less brick is what I've heard. But now you're saying no.
I didn't say anything about the brick.
But I heard, you know, it's too urban, so less brick. So if we could certainly do that.
Is it brick what makes it
Yeah,
urban?
I
That's,
don't know.
I don't know.
It's a little bit of everything.
That's what we're trying to
I kinda
get.
like it,
I
so.
think the entrance
Yeah.
makes it urban.
Everybody else
I
beat it up.
think I don't know, as I said, I think that
I mean, earlier you said a few gables or something. I mean, to me, it's almost like there's a few things either missing or tweaks. I'm not in the scrap and start over camp. I don't dislike it. I just think that it's a little sharper rather than warm.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that the floor plan works. And it's just a matter of finding a skin that fits
Sure.
the neighborhood.
More residential. Or not necessarily.
To me, the canopy seems a little too modern.
Yeah, my reaction is that from the comments I've heard, everybody, it makes people feel uncomfortable because it's contemporary. So if you put back like a pitch, if this changed to, some kind of pitched roof and there was less contemporary modern flair, then that's I guess what I've heard.
when you
from
talk about a
comments.
gable, where are you talking about a gable?
Well, the canopy, one of the comments, and I don't know how
Just
well-
on the canopy,
on the canopy
you're not
itself.
talking on the roof.
I'm not sure, if putting a pitched roof on this building makes a lot of sense. I think, I'm not sure.
It might work just on that wing,
On one
right
what?
hand.
on the front wing, as opposed to on the entire roof.
What, you mean, the front one meaning this side?
No,
This side?
Gabling that.
Would you just see shingles when you drove up?
Yeah.
no, you would see the 2 stories and then the pitch roof with a couple of dormers.
I mean, you'd see the shingle side of it, though, you wouldn't see like the gable.
Yeah, well, the dormers would make that up.
And the
Yeah,
dormers
that's what
will
I'm
be
hearing, that it wants
residential.
to be more traditional.
Well, what do you say traditional?
Justly.
I think of
Pitched roof dormers migrate towards the north
I
end.
see the original school as being the traditional brick box old school. That's when you say traditional, that's what I'm hearing. Is an
Migrate
old.
closer towards the north end, what we showed them.
I understand that. I kept on misunderstanding what you're saying by traditional. I'm like, no, I don't want that. I don't want to.
Tight on right now.
Traditional in my mind and just gable roofs,
Understood.
very
You can't shift.
vernacular.
Sure, you can do anything.
Well, you could.
Okay.
I don't know that we helped you much.
We'll find out. We have a meeting in 2 weeks. I think we need to start landing on this, frankly, if we are going to be meeting our design development deadlines. Okay.
Well, is it worth looking at doing it in not 2 weeks, but
No, we need, I
we
mean,
need 2 weeks?
This is like from the meeting 2 weeks ago, we walked away thinking we were in decent shape. And then we come back with more comments, which is fine. But so it's gonna take us another couple of weeks to redo this, for sure. Yeah.
Now, are we talking mostly aesthetics that isn't gonna really affect all the other trades all that much, or is it still, is this holding air?
Sorry?
Are we talking mostly aesthetics on the exterior? Or, I mean, is this gonna hold everybody else up from working on it as well?
Likely, yeah. Until we resolve this. We've got some work to do on the site too.
This-
I had a question
This
about
was
this.
online last week, I saw.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it.
What is it?
I can't project it, but it shows this very creative concept sketch. After meeting with the client, it changes. After working the drawings, it changes. And then after construction, it's a box.
I had a question on the site. At the meeting, I don't know if I misunderstood what you're saying, but the field that was out front, is that needed for the programming at the school? Or it's just a field to fill in the space because the town needs fields?
Okay, so your educational specifications are silent on the requirements for recreation fields. So some of the initial site plan concepts did not show a formal field. When we started going in front of a number of the boards, that was, we didn't really get any comments about layout of the buildings, but boy, Cheshire really needs to have recreation fields. We heard it again last night. We're gonna be losing ball fields, et cetera. So now both the North End and Norton have 2 green spaces that, while perhaps not a formal field, we're at least showing the dimensions of the soccer field. So I mentioned this earlier, we had a lot of comments about, well, why can't this be closer to the building and you put all your parking down here? That from a pickup and drop off sequencing, staff parking, visitor parking, doesn't make any sense to do that. However, if we may be able to develop something here where this line is a little bit further to the west on North Brooksville, maybe that gives us a little bit of dexterity with how we lay this out. Maybe it shifts in landscape rather than portrait, and maybe gets to be offset a little.
I think the problem is that people look at this as a school site.
Yep.
And the fields that are on the site, play double duty.
Mhm.
And it's used by the kids during the day and it's used by the town at night. But they look at that and they say, well, it's awfully far from the school, it's down by the road. And I think that's the concern that keeps getting expressed over and over again.
Well, that was the question during the meeting, is there was a lot of concern about how far it was from the school, but
Right.
the kids at the elementary schools don't go outside for gym. They never go outside for gym.
That field
They
is
did in
more
my
of a-
school.
That's
Well,
a community.
Your school was a very long time ago. I'm telling you, my kids haven't gone outside for gym in 2 years.
No.
Yeah.
So the fact that the
field-
field would
That's
be,
not gonna be used by the school for the school.
that's what I'm
very
getting
often.
at, is I don't think it should dictate the design in
How
the
about-
front.
How
That's all.
about this? We take the soccer field off of the site.
The drawings.
Leave the green.
Just
Yeah.
leave it green space.
I mean, frankly, the way that we've discussed this operationally is, this would kind of be the recess field. We're actually looking to see if maybe it couldn't be in this area, so it's a little bit closer, or at least some green space in this area, so it's a little bit closer to our cafeteria. But the concept was never that this was going to be, recess or gym.
Is it possible to do both? Have one on the right-hand side and one up above, and then eliminate the one down by the road?
I think that this area in here needs to be green with the playscapes on the side, so that, because you have a calf and a gym here, and likely they're coming out this door or that door, and there's gonna be whatever, 100 kids or, students running around. That's the space to do it, because this program over on this side is your music, it's not your regular classrooms. But over here is more of a passive field, quite honestly, where I don't see them going out there during recess, other than, if they come out the end, if they come out the end to have some kind of recess before lunch and then go to lunch, that's fine.
Yeah, classes, teachers may bring their
Yeah,
kids
yeah.
out, not part of regular recess, but at other times. And you've got the playscapes there in the field. But that field on the right-hand side is also a good one for the community to use.
Absolutely.
There's lots of parking right there. They come right around, they don't have to go all the way to the back of the building. And, that's a place where you could have a soccer game or potentially even put in a ball field. Although I have to say, I don't think the schools use ball fields very much at all. I know the town wants ball
Kickball,
fields.
Right.
Kickball.
And you want to be able to provide some town fields to the extent you can.
Right.
But again, to answer Chuck's point, that field at the bottom is not going to be used by the school for any reason.
But it
so-
keeps causing all kinds of issues as we
Yeah.
look at design. I think you could,
saying, it will
you
cause
could,
an
you
issue
could
if it's not there.
readjust,
Yeah.
you could
Right.
readjust the parking, making much more green space going in, if you were to eliminate that field. And,
So do you think we should be looking at alternatives? The town council asked us to look to see if we could get more green space over in this area.
Does that
I don't
make
know
sense?
how that would work, but I'm thinking of the North End School. You've got, the two parking lots, and you got that really nice green that's kind of in the middle that divides it off. You're looking out from the building, you've got, some beautiful green space there. I don't know how, you're dealing here with a really tight site. But if we didn't get all hung up on having this field down by North Brooksvale, you might be able to readjust some of the parking, add in some nicer green space as you're approaching the building.
Yeah, I think we'll try to, we gotta study that. Town council asked us to,
Yeah.
I'm
But
not,
I
you're not
mean,
gonna get a field there, but you get some more green space.
But you could potentially even enlarge the field that's on the right-hand side. I don't know how much bigger you could go there, but, one bigger field is probably just as good as multiple smaller fields.
Is there anything dictating where the building is on the site? Like, the building is right where it is, but is there something saying it has to be right there?
The wetlands.
Well, yeah, but you've got all that to the right,
The problem is the entry sequence, Laurel,
okay?
and we've been over this. The further you shift this over, this intersection, this knuckle, really starts to become operationally problematic for how you bring people into the site, how you park, and how you approach the building.
So
From
you've
a
been
pickup and drop-off.
rotating it.
So taking it and turning it and putting it over here, you're hiding, the building. And, the costs associated with getting there certainly get increased too.
You could rotate the right-hand side up so that, the issue I was pointing out before where, that classroom wing seems to jut out and that's what hits
Right.
you.
Yeah, I heard from you, yeah, and that might help us with up here too. If this became orthogonal with this,
Mhm.
that angle
Right.
would go that way. Yeah,
Exactly.
twist the building.
Yeah.
That
And you don't have
does
to
make
twist
some
it very
sense.
much,
Yeah,
but
that does make some sense, yeah. And it'll help us in the back, I think.
Yeah, the whole thing kind of canters a little bit.
Yeah.
It feels, just from, and not to be dismissive of that suggestion.
I'm just
Didn't mean to,
wondering if we're land,
Because we
like
have
land-
kind of, you have a lot of your utilities that are coming in here, all of your stormwater is over here. So from underground infrastructure standpoint, it makes sense that, this is kind of your path of stormwater out to there, and utilities from here to there. But as Jeff had mentioned, yeah, I think we can take a look at that.
I don't know if we helped you or not.
I think we got a little work to do, so we'll get there.
I mean, look what happened with North End School. Did a home run, got an ovation and all that.
If I see
Need
Ernest,
more- need
actually, I
more.
see Ernest on the street, I'm crossing him, running the other way.
Yeah, I noticed you didn't bring him today. He was so proud of us.
He should be though.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, something I noticed was missing on North End, and I see it here, maybe because we don't have a name yet, but you have a nice prominent letters on here that say what it is, but on the renderings for North End, I saw nothing. I was gonna ask, but I figured, well, it's too soon, but since you have it on here, I
Got VE, I think.
Yeah.
We just didn't put it up because I think there's been discussion about, I'm not sure if that's what the name is going to be or so.
Oh,
We didn't
no.
wanna,
It definitely won't be
Create-
that name.
yeah,
The town council at some point, there are groups in the community
Sure.
right now pushing fighting names. And in fact, I've been asked about it a couple of times, and I just said, this has nothing to do with that. We will not touch that issue.
so,
At some point, the town
School has to
council
be named.
will
Just
put
put
together
North
a
End,
committee
whatever
or
you're
something.
we were hesitant to put it on just because of that, that's all. Is the real answer.
School.
So that'll happen sometime before the building opens, but
Just like we do for commercial buildings, put a sign that says tenant.
Tenant sign.
Sell names.
Could do Gossenberg Elementary School.
There you go. Yeah, I don't think so. All right,
Question?
Thank you. Rich, I got one more thing for the
Yeah.
architect. Can we get a solid, like, VM value engineering for that option for the north end at the next meeting? For the mechanical
The
option?
costing, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you guys work on that with us? You have the description.
Yeah, I'll need to update it a little bit just to get the capacity more pinned down for them.
Okay.
Did you give us a narrative?
Yes.
You gave us a narrative on that option, right, for
Only for
Norton?
Norton.
Yeah, but can you do the same thing for North End,
No, that's
just
what I
that
need to
one?
do.
Oh, okay.
We'll get it.
so we potentially could save a couple $1 million.
Which is good to have in your pocket, right?
Oh, the only.
We don't know, yeah. In fact, I had even looked at one point if we were under in one building and over in another, is it possible to transfer money? I had the attorney take a look at the
Question.
question on the ballot, and he said that it was acceptable there. We had Jack took a look at it. He said, basically, you could get one bite of the apple. That you'd have to go back up to the state and would also have to get it cleared by the bond council. So it's not something you'd want to do now, but potentially if you were under $1 million on one building and over $1 million on the other, we could do some shifting and still stay within our 166 million budget.
I was curious about that when Greg was talking about the PLA. Because if you're getting a contract and you get a big enough contract, they can say, give me both buildings, I'll save you $1 million. There's some opportunity to recoup some money that was allowed, instead of having this one independent from this one.
Can I just ask one more question? I know October 30th is the energy committee. Is that meeting, do we have a quorum of the energy committee that was here earlier? I mean, are they
I have no
satisfied?
idea
based on-
how many are here. I can send a note and ask them.
Do
I
they have
don't know.
authority on this?
What's that?
Do they have any authority?
Well,
They have, no,
This direction?
We've been requested to make a presentation
That's
to
all.
them, but
That's
Oh,
They have no legal authority. It's
I
not
was
like,
asking for them to.
yeah,
make
we
a
have to go to
decision.
planning and zoning, we have to go to inland wetlands and all that. They have no legal authority. They have just asked that I come to talk to them about what's going on. And I said, I'm not an expert in this. I need a couple of people with me. And we're just, we're being,
When you asked for a quorum, I thought it was because they needed to vote on something. I misunderstood.
they don't need to vote on anything. We're
Yeah, I just didn't know,
Understood.
based on the level of engagement that we had with that, I
Yeah.
didn't still.
Yeah, and I don't
Gotcha.
know if a lot of the people that were there are on the Energy Commission or not. But, I can send a note to Richard and say, I'm pretty certain he's still gonna want us to come.
Sure.
I can tell you how many were there.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there's 7 in the commission and 5 were here.
Okay,
So.
I have that one also.
okay. So, you wanna check and see if they still want us, or?
Oh, I know they do.
Okay, all right, that's what I figured.
No problem either way, I just didn't know if the initial request was to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
And if we satisfied that.
They're, a very involved group of people here in town. They obviously are looking after the interests of the town, and they want to make sure that as we're designing, we're keeping that in mind. And that's all. It's a courtesy on our part.
Okay.
We completed everything except the open item log. I think you and I need to talk about how we handle that, because, going item by item, I had thought we'd go boom, 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 boom. It didn't quite work
Well,
that way.
I think when we get through some of these initial items, we're gonna be able to then close them, and then, we'll have items that are open and close, so it'll go a lot faster. I think a lot of the things that were on the top of the list are, they're in process, right? They're part of the design right now, and it's, what Craig and Jeff and Justin are working on, so, they are addressing these things.
Yeah, but I think what we're gonna need to do in order to get them done is to come back with responses on some of these, so that there's a recommendation. So that if we're looking at something dealing with the lights or whatever, here's the recommendation, here's why. We can accept it or not accept it and move on. But we can't sit here as a group and debate all the ins and outs and details of it. It'll take us forever.
No, that's right, and that's really part of the design process, and I think that, as it related to the battery backup, that's something that, I think, Vin brought up some items that, I don't think that the design team was aware of before, so.
Yeah.
And isn't that the owner's project requirements, that commissioning agent, they're supposed to be going through this, right? They're the
Yeah,
ones
that's
that would
what I
be
had said
Flushing that out.
to you and to Rich and to the design team. Yeah. so-
They would put the OPR, our first meeting with them is next week. But that could be a discussion.
It's supposed to be together.
Sorry?
The OPR was supposed to be together, wasn't it?
No, the OPR would be with the committee and
Commissioning
then us.
It's- Yeah, so there was a questionnaire that I sent out to you all that we got from Vanzo, so.
Right.
But
they've
all
got
I'm
that.
saying is if we've got items here that we want to close, we need to have specific recommendations that come to us that says, here's that item, here's how we recommend you deal with it. And we want to close it off.
Yeah.
And, and that's what we need to do. The one item we haven't talked about is the gym floor. And, there's a question right now. O&G is carrying a wood floor for both buildings. Tecton is carrying a wood floor in one building and a poured floor in the other building based on the specs. And Dr. Solon sent something out to get feedback. He's gotten feedback from a variety of people, both within staff and all over the state. And just this morning, Jen and Jeff went up and, or down, I guess, to look at
Guilford.
to Guilford.
Down, I would say down.
But you're not ready to make a recommendation. You're looking for more information.
Yes, in 2 weeks. Jeff is going to be ready to make a recommendation. I mean, if I had to guess, he's leaning towards wood for both. But, exploring this option of a rolled on board floors is worth completing the, due diligence that
Fine
we're
if you
working
want to do
on.
the homework. I personally,
That's not holding anything up. I don't think you
No.
need a decision on that.
I don't know when you would need a decision, because I know it does have impact on your design.
The only real difference is, we need to set the elevation of the structural slab. It's lower, if you have a wood performance floor that has like anywhere from 2.5 inch to 4 inch depth. It's not critical. I mean, if we get the decision this month, we're fine.
It's only a small dollar amount, but is it worth an ad alternate or no? A gym floor, the wood floor? instead
I
of
wouldn't
floor?
put it as an add-on,
Yeah.
just because you're messing up column heights, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's one of those things that we can just make a decision.
Yeah.
And my gut tells me, I mean, I think probably an elementary teacher can function even with a vinyl floor, for the most part, the kinds of things that they're doing. I'm looking at this though as a community facility. And as a community facility, my gut tells me that long-term, we would be much better off with a wood floor, but that's my bias and it'll be up to the committee.
Quick
You're
question.
not the only one that has that bias.
Okay.
I'm in the minority here, but, sorry,
Well, you're just looking at maintenance.
it's my job.
One of the schools that you went through, on your tours was the Oxford Middle School. And I think may have mentioned this, but that school was built from 2019 to 2020, opened for fall of 2020, started school. So it opened in a hybrid environment with them going back to school during COVID. They used the hardwood gymnasium floor as an auxiliary cafeteria. And just, yeah, it was.
Destroyed it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's one of the considerations.
But it's, we spent so much time programming and making sure that we understood how they were gonna use the space. And when on day one that they opened, they completely used the building differently.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
yeah,
who knew you could plan for that?
I know, right?
You know, my old school had a wooden floor in the gym, but the auditorium and cafeteria were together. So if you were doing a music assembly or if you had parents coming or whatever, you're setting up those chairs on a vinyl floor in the caf, not on the wood floor. So that wood floor, stayed very nice. It didn't get messed up. I think it took about 15 years and then they finally had to sand it down and redo it. But
Without a doubt, I think people enjoy the wood floor a lot more, just from a, visual impact feeling, the way that
Sounds better.
sounds better.
Well, I know, if you're gonna do old man basketball, which we talked about, I think that's kind of an expectation, but, and if there was a huge dollar figure, I might have a different feeling about it.
So I did share this kind of in the informal scrum before the meeting, and these costs should be validated with ONG, but the wood floor the wood sports floor, wood athletic flooring is in the 25 to 26 dollars per square foot range. This particular type of flooring system is somewhere in the 22 to 24
It's
square.
a $5 difference.
It's a $5 difference. So 6,000 square feet in your gymnasiums, you're talking about a $30,000 delta.
40,000,
30, 40?
40,
140.
5 times 5,700, right? Was it 5,765 or something?
5 times 6,000 is 30,000.
That's how the rest of.
Get these people a
calculator. It's
I
after.
think
Right.
he's got the markups.
Laurel is saying that it's a $1 million
it's the mark.
credit.
So this material, though, I'm just curious, yes, we don't have smoking in our facilities, but if a worker drops something hot or hot coffee spills or how is this? I just know that we had the track and there was a little fire on the track and that was about $30,000. But how do you repairing a wood floor is not that big a deal. It's pretty straightforward. Is this something that can be repaired? Is this something that damages?
I think you could
easily?
cut-
You guys think that's stupid?
No,
You
no,
guys
no.
think it's stupid?
No,
I
Jeff killed
rescind
me
the
over
question.
this floor discussion before. It has nothing to do with you. No, you could cut a patch. You can actually cut it out. It's a rolled material and patch it in. If you do it on the lines, I guess it's more All right, enough on the
We'll deal
rubber
with that
floor.
next
That's
time
never
around.
gonna happen.
Anything else for the good of the order?
Yeah, quick question. I don't know if this is for Rich or for Jeff. Where do we stand on the space waiver?
It's the last item on your checklist, and it's assigned to the gentleman down at the other end of the table.
Who
It's an
signed it
it's
to
an
me
open item.
last night?
So I talked with Vin and Jeff saw them last night. We've submitted a lot of these for different municipalities, and Jeff and Ben had asked if we can get an example so that they can then tailor their justification, and then we'll put it together and we'll make the submission.
When does that normally get done? In the project?
That I can't answer.
Is that focusing on Norton with the 2 classrooms?
It's gonna be both of them.
What's the space waiver for the North?
I think Jeff can answer the reason why we need a space waiver
On the North end? What's the reason for the space waiver?
Pre-kindergarten. Pre-kindergarten program and then.
Wasn't that part of the original?
It is, and you are receiving a reduction of your reimbursement. So I think if you're going to, the intent of the space waiver is if you have a specialized program that requires more space, you explain it and you give a calculation as to why. I think you should try it for both, because both schools now have specialized programs that don't necessarily fit into the equation that the state has.
So it would increase our reimbursement.
Exactly.
Well,
It wouldn't
or
change.
It wouldn't decrease your reimbursement, right?
Yeah. They've already calculated a deduction in their reimbursement rate based on that ineligible areas, like they're over. So it wouldn't change anything on design plans, it would just increase your percentage of reimbursement, which I think it's worth.
Because the original,
Town
the
wants
the
everything
original,
they can get.
the original size that they budgeted when they went to referendum were over the allowable area?
Correct.
Okay, so your buildings were already, okay.
For instance, on Norton, the square footage that the planning arrived at was 96,000 square feet approximately. If you do the student enrollment times the allowable square footage calculated by the state, you arrive at an 86,000 square foot building. So there's a delta of 9 to 10,000 square feet. That percentage gets prorated, is a prorated deduction from your reimbursement. So if you're 10% over your square footage, you get a 10% reduction in your, and that's about the approximate number. You guys were like 44.5% or something like that.
Yeah.
You get 50% reimbursement. The way that it was calculated in the grant application and the referendum was about 44%. So that deduction assumed that you were already accounting for that. Now, if we can get a space waiver, maybe that 44% goes to 48 or 49%, or as close to your maximum reimbursement that you can get.
Okay. I was aware of the 2 classrooms in Norton, and you had gone through the space calculations when we were online with the state, but I didn't realize the North end.
Yeah.
So it just means they bond less, it just means you borrow less, I guess.
It means they'll get reimbursed.
Yeah, it means they'll get more
So they'll-
Just borrow less
yeah.
money.
They either bond more, or pay it off quicker, or whatever.
It's more for the markups on the gym floor.
Anything else? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Yeah, I know, right?
And it is unanimous.
This is our motion.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
The